R.I.P. Fifth.
Fifth of what?
Fifth. Five Iron Frenzy. Does nobody call them Fifth?
Five Iron Frenzy? Who's that?
I don't know, but they're either dead or dying.
Well, welcome back. Back to the podcast. This week we are talking about Five Iron Frenzy is either dead or dying, both versions.
Right.
We're including them as one episode.
Yes.
As you know, there's two songs, there's two versions, the fake ska version, or the wannabe ska version, and the real version.
Two sides, 1 7-inch.
Yeah. Are they both on each opposite sides?
I said that, but
I don't remember. We'll have to look that up.
We have it. They're over there.
Oh, I don't want to go over there. Where'd you leave it? Is it there?
They're in the record cabinet.
They're in the record cabinet?
Yeah.
They're underneath?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was totally wrong. It's 2 discs.
It's on 2 different 7 inches.
Yeah.
That's right. I don't think about this a lot, but yes, we got a lot to talk about.
You're
with Five Iron Frenzy.
kerfluffled today.
I'm a little kerfluffled. Let me get into it. But because there's so much going on, it's another crossover episode, second this month, I think. Although this is coming out in May, so never mind. We're recording this in April, but it's coming out in May. The bunch of stuff to talk about this week because we're going to generally be talking about Five Iron Frenzy and our knowledge and experience listening to that band. Then we'll be talking about the actual Relient K song, maybe a little bit about what I understand to be their relationship, especially at the time and around the time Five Iron Frenzy initially broke up in 2003. So, yeah, I guess no top of the show business this week. We got so much to do.
Yeah, slip those vinyls out.
So
I want to see what
I recall now that these are part of the Vinyl Countdown 1 and 2. Which were, if I'm not mistaken, Relient K's first 7 inches.
They're like Marilyn Monroe red. What this one is.
And the other one is like a clear red.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Vinyl Countdown 7 inches have been reprinted a bunch. Yeah, this one's a reprint. Okay, our Vinyl Countdown 2 is a reprint. It says copyright 2003, copyright 2015. So is there a copyright on that one?
Yeah, but that's just... I don't know, maybe for when they originally came up with the song. And
okay,
then
this is a reprint. No, so this is my understanding. I remember this. So,
okay.
Yeah, so overall, we're getting right into it. Five Iron Frenzy was, just to create the baseline, Five Iron Frenzy was, I can't imagine no one's aware, but they were like the Christian ska punk band. They're very popular, super nerdy band. A lot to talk about them. There's another podcast you can check out that we'll be meeting with today called Magnified Pod, who go far more in depth with them. So there might not be. There's only so much we can go in depth with them. But when Five Iron Frenzy broke up in 2003, they had a whole year lead up to their breakup. They had the whole thing planned out with releasing. They self-released their what was meant to be their last record, so they could get into the hands of fans before their final tour. But then that record was actually fully released like in retail after they broke up. And Five Iron Frenzy, during that same lead-up year of Five Iron Frenzy breaking up, wrote these 2 songs. And I remember hearing these songs well before they were, a year or 2 before they were recorded. I remember hearing them all the time because 2003 is still pinnacle.
Five Iron Frenzy wrote them or Relient K wrote them?
Sorry, Relient K wrote them. And 2003 is still pinnacle time of me seeing Relient K multiple times a year. And they played this song all the time, whether they were playing with Five Iron Frenzy or not. All of 2003, they would play this song live. And then eventually they recorded it, and it was initially only available on the Vinyl Countdown 1 and the Vinyl Countdown 2. And if I'm not mistaken, these are the first... We own reprints from a couple years ago, but the Vinyl Countdown 1 and 2 were the first 7 inches that Relient K ever released. That's why the song on the first one is Vinyl Countdown. The whole point was we're Relient K. We only release CDs that you may want to throw away.
Well, you learn something new every day. Yeah. I was excited about this episode because I'm like, Danny's gonna fill me with knowledge.
Yeah. So on the Relient K side of it, this was the beginning of Relient K releasing vinyl. I'm pretty sure. I mean, maybe some of the full lengths. I'm sure if I looked at Discogs, I could figure this out. But maybe some of the full lengths had limited 12-inch pressings. But in 2003, this was a big deal, I remember, on their website. It's like, hey, we're releasing special 7-inches. We're doing this punk rock thing of releasing 7-inches. And the song on the first one is about how everyone should enjoy vinyl. And this is before the vinyl revolution of, 2000. I think I think everyone has a different feeling of when the vinyl revolution starts, but I feel like it generally starts around 2011.
Yeah.
Like, is that when, like, it probably before that? It's like a slow build.
Around then, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure must be research out there about the history of where vinyl sort of rebuilds its popularity. But anyway, they put those 2 songs on their first 2 7-inches. Now I want an original pressing from 2003 because I never owned these. I had a few records growing up, like, my grandmother had a record player that I would play them on, and once in a while I would see a record that was like cheap and it look and I bought them as collector's items because I didn't actually have a record player I could easily use when I was in high school and in community college. So like my rarest thing is I have the Live at Gilman 7-inch for Green Day, which has When I Come Around on it, but when it has a different title. It's like Now I Come Around or something. We have it over there somewhere. I haven't played it in years. But yeah, at the time I was thinking, like, should I get the Relient K 7-inches in 2003? And I was like, maybe not. And then eventually someone ripped the MP3s from these 7-inches in 2003, and I was able to get them that way. And then, of course, by 2008... both these songs end up on Burden the B-Sides, which I just realized we broke this week we're breaking one of my cardinal rules, which is not to return to the same album within 4 weeks of each other. We're doing another Burden the B-Sides track right after we did For the Band, which was a Burden the B-Sides track. But I think of For the Band more as an Employee of the Month song, EP song. So... yeah. Anyway.
I had no idea these existed because I was like an internet phobe back in the day. Right. So like when I was discovering bands and music that I really liked, like Relient K, it did not really occur to me that you could go online and like look for stuff.
Right.
Like I just went to iTunes because it was there. Or, I went to the record store to buy something. I did have a record player as well. When I was in Restoration Hardware with my parents, I saw they had like a cool one. And I was like, can I get this? And they got it for me. And then I busted out my parents' old record collection. So there was like, I was listening to a lot of Herman's Hermits because that was my mom's like favorite band in high school.
Nice. I'm just looking at the rest of our vinyls, and yeah, they're all reprints of the vinyl. So it's interesting. This song is sort of a linchpin of multiple things in Relient K history, right? Not only is it the linchpin not only is it a place where you can discuss Fire and Frenzy, and how it's always been my perception that like Fire and Frenzy was a bigger band for all the time that they were around until they broke up in 2003. Fire and Frenzy was a bigger band than Relient K, but Relient K, that momentum just kept building, and then past 2003, Relient K I would think got bigger than Fire and Frenzy ever did. Similar in a way to all my multiple theories about the relationship between MXPX and Blink-182. Because we've never talked about this on this show. Jessica's like, yes. She's heard, I think you've heard me talk about this before, but yeah. MXPX, for a sliver of time, was a bigger band than Blink-182, which a lot of people don't believe when I say it, but it's true. Right. Because Life in General, which was their first major breakthrough album, that came out before Dude Ranch, which was the equivalent for Blink-182. Like, sure, Cheshire Cat was a big record for Blink-182 at the time, but it wasn't a major break. Nothing on Cheshire Cat was really on, like, Kiss 108 in Boston. It wasn't on the pop channels. Like, Damn It was on pop channels. Josie was on, like, pop channels. So Dude Ranch is their biggest album, but Life in General came before it. Point is, I see that there's a parallel in my mind where MXPX was bigger than Blink-182 for a short while, and here you have Fire and Frenzy being bigger than Relient K for a short while. But then Fire and Frenzy bounces. They're like, we're out of here.
I thought your tie-in was going to be that Magnified Pod is called Magnified Pod because they started their first season with MXPX.
There's that too. It's just a rich tapestry of coincidences. And then the other thing that it ties into Relient K history is, like I just said, these tracks were the beginning of the 7-inch series, which continues to this day up until, I guess the most recent ones would be number 14 and Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I actually have a Facebook post from Reliant K from October 15th, 2015. And it says, going back to our punk rock roots, we decided to make some limited edition 7-inch releases. We have several of this type of series planned over the next year. At the end, there will be a limited edition box available to store all your 7-inch copies in. This is series 1. Each 7-inch is limited to 1,000 units. And then it's the creepy piece, or the creepy 7-inch. Side A, Softer to Me acoustic. Side B, Jefferson Airplane original version. The next one is the Vinyl Countdown 1. Side A, the Vinyl Countdown. Side B, 5 Iron Frenzy is Either Dead or Dying. The next is the Vinyl Countdown 2. Side A, Nothing Without You. Side B, 5 Iron Frenzy is Either Dead or Dying ska version.
Well, man, maybe I'm totally wrong. No, I can't be wrong. Am I having a Berenstein moment? Because I'm looking at the Vinyl Countdown on Discogs, and it's like released 2014. I'm like, really? There wasn't? So maybe I'm crazy, but I could have sworn the Vinyl Countdown was released the first time on vinyl. And yeah, because they were on the Bird and the B-sides. They had to be released previously before they got put on Bird and the B-sides. So I swear, but I'm not figuring this out on Discogs, that there had to have been a vinyl release of Vinyl Countdown 1 and 2, like that predates their big series of 7-inches that kind of was more recently.
I don't know. We haven't done that song yet. I can't look.
We'll figure it out.
You know, research done on it.
I'm sure a lot of people will write in, correct us if I'm totally wrong. I swear Vinyl Countdown 1 and 2 were released in 2003 in limited quantities. If I'm wrong, someone correct me. I'm not seeing it on Discogs. But like I said, where were those songs released before they ended up on Bird and the B-sides?
Yeah, I don't know.
So this is not something we figured out, but we will figure it, because we got so much to talk about this week. We're really talking about 5 Iron Frenzy. We're going to be talking with the guys from Magnified Pod. So we're really focusing on 5 Iron Frenzy. When we do the song Vinyl Countdown, we will have figured out all of the history of the 7-inch series and where the Vinyl Countdown and 1 and 2 were first released.
A side Bird and the B-sides note is, I never noticed it before, but so Bird and the B-sides is categorized on Google as country music.
Oh, yeah. You showed me that today.
Weird.
I found it.
Oh, good.
Sorry. Okay. I found the proof that I'm not insane. So yeah, I know you showed me. You're like, Bird and the B-sides is categorized as country. I was like, well, there's one country song on there.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes sense. Yes. Okay. Good. Here it is. I remember. And man, it goes for a lot of money now. The Vinyl Countdown was a 2002, December 22nd, 2002. I'm sure it was hard to get it in time for Christmas if it was released that soon to Christmas. The Vinyl Countdown is totally different cover. Jess, sorry, I'm showing my phone.
Oh, yeah.
A totally different cover than the 7-inch series with the simple cardboard sleeves and the stickers on top.
But it does have the dynamite, which is on the label.
So this was a special vinyl EP that they put out, and it looks like, I was mistaken to say there was a Vinyl Countdown 1 and 2 originally. There was just the Vinyl Countdown with, on side A was the Vinyl Countdown and Fire and Frenzy is Dead or Dying, the punk version. And on side B was We're Nothing Without You and the 5 Iron Frenzy Dead or Dying ska version.
See, earlier when I got it wrong, I was referencing that one, Dan.
And
I was referencing the original.
And these are pricey now. I wish I should have bought one at the time. It's gone on Discogs. It's gone for as much as $175.
Wow.
Right now, the most expensive one online is $75. The cheapest one is $40. So yeah, I wish I'd gotten one of these at the time. And it was released by Mono vs. Stereo. Now I have to wonder if this is like one of the early or first things that Mono vs. Stereo put out. Because I remember hearing Mono vs. Stereo and never digging deeply into what it is, what it was at the time, but thinking like, oh, what's Mono vs. Stereo? And I feel like the release of this in 2000, I thought it was 2003. It was December 2002. Thinking that being the first time I heard of Mono vs. Stereo.
Yeah. Well, I did do a little bit of a deep dive this week.
Oh, good.
And I found a blog from theartsywriter.wordpress.com. And it's called Five Iron Frenzy. They were really, really, really good. And it says, once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, at the turn of the millennium, there was a great ska band known as Five Iron Frenzy, or FIF. They were a great...
Or Fifth.
Or Fifth. They were a great band that gave us the gift of 6 years, 1997 to 2003, of awesome, goofy, humorous, and trumpet-filled ska songs. They were...
Well, I like trumpet... Okay. It's just, that's a sentence that sounds clever when you say it, but it's like, well, they had trumpet, saxophone, and trombone. Jessica's like, okay.
They were even sillier than...
Actually, they didn't just have trumpet.
They were even sillier than Reliant K, like way sillier. One of their best EPs, Quantity is Job 1, includes These Are Not My Pants, the rock opera. This goofball song series is about the epic saga of pants without an owner and is done in different styles of music ranging from meatloaf to heavy metal. Meatloaf's heavy metal. He's like 80s heavy metal. There is an awesome YouTube rendition of it where some teenagers with too much time on their hands reenact the entire opera. One of FIF's best songs is also found on this EP, My Evil Plan to Save the World, probably one of the catchiest songs ever. Reliant K did a tribute to them on their last B-side/EP, The Bird and the B-Sides.
No, they didn't do it on that. They collected it to that. They did it on the original Vinyl Countdown.
Their tribute consists of 2 songs. Five Iron Frenzy is Either Dead or Dying, and Five Iron Frenzy is Either Dead or Dying wannabe ska version. Both are full of tongue-in-cheek Reliant K-ness, which is truly an homage to the great FIF. Thus, with Reliant K, I say Five Iron Frenzy. They were good, they were good, they were really, really, really good. Five Iron Frenzy, and when you see them... Yeah, Five Iron Frenzy, and when you see them, we really, really think you should.
They're just quoting the lyrics, I get it.
For being so cool and so awesome, and thank you for being so neato.
Look at their teeth and then tell them to floss them. I think Reese is wearing a speedo. So, yeah, I mean, this comes back to the thing I felt about For the Band, which was like, most people heard these songs, the Five Iron Frenzy songs, for the first time on Bird and the B-Sides.
Right.
Which is a little obnoxious because Jessica almost dropped her phone.
Sorry about that.
Which is a little obnoxious because this song had existed for years before that.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't remember the exact timeline of Five Iron Frenzy announcing their breakup, but I definitely remember that like long year lead up to it. And then I guess when did you think about it, I'm like, when did the actual last show take place? Did it take place in 2002? No, it took
You were at it, weren't you?
I was at it. Oh,
Yeah.
That's the other thing is I was at the final Five Iron Frenzy concert, which Reliant K played at. Okay, so we're getting out of order here, but okay. I don't know the exact timeline. By the way, I'm constantly getting years wrong. I hinted at it before, but all during our For the Band episode, I was referring to Bird and the B-Sides as a 2009 record. No, that's Forget Not Slow Down. Bird and the B-Sides 2008. People should know this in general about me as you listen to our podcast. I get years in the ballpark correct area, and I do care about getting them right, but when I'm like on a bent of talking about something, I'll generally get something wrong in like a year or two. But I'm not like one of these people who will say, like 10 years ago when Napster was big, and it's like 10 years ago is 2010.
Right.
It's like there's people who will say 10 years ago meaning the 90s, and you're like, the 90s was 20 years ago at least, 30 years ago, really. Yeah. So I don't do that. You know what I mean?
And it's so seldom that I will ever correct you because I probably don't know the exact
I don't think
year
it really
either.
matters that much. I do care. I want people to know I care about getting the facts right. But if I'm ballpark correct and I don't think about it until we're editing the podcast, I'm like, oh, okay, I got that wrong. I did it again. I did something similar for myself. We were editing the podcast. I was like, I kind of accidentally, if you did the math, when I talked about when I graduated, I accidentally made it sound like I graduated in 1998.
Wow.
I was listening to myself talk about how I didn't start going to local shows because we were talking about For the Band. I'm like,
Right.
I didn't start going to local shows until my senior year. But then I referred to 2002 as 4 years after I'd been going to local shows. So really, I'd probably been going to local shows since my junior year.
Oh man, you would be like a massive
Because I graduated in 2001. Yeah. I graduated in 2001, the summer before 9/11. Remember that summer before 9/11?
Yeah, it was the summer before I started high school.
Oh my goodness. And 9/11 ties back into my personal memories and the relationship and the actual relationship between Five Iron Frenzy and Relient K, because the Electric Youth Tour was a big deal for me in 2001 when Five Iron Frenzy, it was basically Five Iron Frenzy was the headliner, but I remember feeling like Relient K was a co-headliner or whatever. They were, Five Iron Frenzy was bigger on the poster, but it was like, come see Relient K and Five Iron Frenzy and whoever else was opening for them. I don't recall right now. And I went to that show. I went to that tour twice, and I had forgotten that it was the week after 9/11.
Oh wow!
Because I remember Reese Roper. I kind of remember Relient K not making a comment about 9/11, deciding we're the opening band or whatever, and just not making any particular reference to it. But then Reese Roper at some point during Fire and Frenzy set saying, you know, we know this is scary times, confusing, very prescient to 2020.
Yeah.
But at least you could have a concert to go to feel better about the state of the world in after 9/11. But I remember Reese Roper saying like, "Oh, it's confusing times, but we're all glad we almost canceled the tour, but we wanted to be here with all of you." And over the years, as I recall that show, part of me was like, you start to get more distant from the real emotion. Because everyone's like, never forget. Mm-hmm. But you can never, if you weren't personally impacted by it, like know someone who died or was close to the situation, like, unfortunately, the further away you get from 9/11, the more like a shadow it starts to feel. And that's how I would start to feel, right? So over the years, I would think back to Reese Roper's statement about how, we wanted to be here because, we didn't want to cancel the tour because of what happened. And I think, like, was that really necessary? Did they have to do that? Like, couldn't they just, kind of left it where it was? And then I looked at Five Iron Frenzy's tour history because they have their entire tour history saved on their website. I'm like, oh no, it was the week after 9/11 it happened.
Yeah.
So they had to make a comment.
Oh yeah.
Like, so I felt bad that I had been rewriting history in my mind. But see, I often move the dates of things.
Right.
Like, I have all these memories, but I can't collate them into a proper time frame all the time.
Also, travel was really, kind of up in the air, kind of off at that time.
Right.
So I would imagine, like, doing a tour would be difficult to get around or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So Five Iron Frenzy, I felt like they really helped Relient K build their audience at that time. And I was a huge fan of Five Iron Frenzy. And yeah, they're a super goofy band, but they also had Christian lyrics, and they were also clean, so your parents, because moms could like them too, and all that stuff. But whenever we come across, I don't think of Five Iron Frenzy when we come across these, but whenever we come across these Relient K reviews that get angry that Five Iron Frenzy have funny, goofy songs, and they're like, why can't they be serious? Or why can't they sing more about Jesus? Why do they have to have these pointless songs about Sadie Hawkins dances?
Those bands exist, and if that's what you want, go listen to those bands. Give everybody else their silly, fun bands.
Like, that's the thing, is like, everyone's allowed to write anything they want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, how boring would the world be if only every song was of one type?
Yeah.
Like, there used to
everyone can make their art their own way.
Yeah.
Like, an artist doesn't owe it to you. Relient K didn't owe it to us to give us another Forget and Not Slow Down. They were allowed to make a collapsible lung.
Right. Yeah.
That was their choice.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. Bands are allowed to go in whatever direction they want.
So,
You don't have to stick to one thing.
Exactly. So, yeah, but Five Iron Frenzy definitely got the same short shrift of people saying, like, why do you... Although I guess being a ska band, maybe some people would understand a little bit better.
Right.
Like, because ska is a goofier type of music. it takes a certain lack of shame to be in a ska band. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, we're going to sing.
Are you telling me ska's not serious music?
There are very serious ska bands, obviously. There are bands that are like like this, like, it depends.
Sorry, I just started singing Married Girl in my head.
Oh, yeah.
Popping along.
Yeah. So, like, there are dignified ska bands like the Slackers and, like, most anything sort of first wave style, any first wave bands, the Scatolites, even a band like, but I was going to say some politically bent bands like...
Bad Boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
What's that called? Inner Circle? Jessica and I went to reggae night at the Hollywood Bowl like 2-3 years ago. It was Bob Marley's birthday, and two of his sons, Ziggy Marley and another one that I can't remember his name, they were going to be there playing a complete Bob Marley tribute set. And I'm like, well, I guess this is the closest we could ever get to see Bob Marley live, so we got to do it. And
did he do the Arthur theme?
No, he didn't.
I couldn't rember if I just was like, it was my dream for him to do that, or he didn't, or if it actually happened.
That would be amazing. If it's a Bob Marley tribute set, it's a tribute to their father's, like, I can't remember. I think it was like his would-be 70th birthday or something.
I don't care, Danny. I want to hear, and I say, hey, what a wonderful kind of day.
That's my favorite ska song. So, but what Jessica was referencing was that Inner Circle. Oh, and I also went because the Scatolites opened. Mm-hmm. It was the Scatolites, Inner Circle, and Bob Marley's sons playing an all Bob Marley set. So I was like, I had never seen the Scatolites live. I'm like, want to go for that. This is the closest we could ever probably get to see Bob Marley live, is seeing his two sons play a tribute set. So let's go to that. I didn't know who Inner Circle was. I'm like, I've heard of them, but I don't know what they do. And then they had these signs and merchandise that said Bad Boys of Reggae, but that didn't click in our brain until Inner Circle's set was ending, and then they played Bad Boys, what you gonna do?
Oh!
Which is exactly also like when I took you to see Colby Callier, who's sort of a reggae artist. She has reggae songs.
So good.
And they played, was it not Chelsea Peretti? What's her name? That's the comedian. Did I erase it from your brain with that?
You did, actually. Oh, man. And I just posted about this.
What's the name of that song from Twilight?
1,000 Years song. I don't know what it's actually called. But you can see my socks was talking about that. He's like, whatever happened to her? And I think maybe Brady Sullivan popped in on that, too. I don't remember now. But basically a couple months ago.
Christina Perry.
Yeah.
We were like, named again, Jessica wanted to see Colby Callier.
Yeah.
And we were like, Christina Perry sounds familiar. We should check out what she does. Never got around to it before the show. And we're sitting there watching the whole show, and then she plays 1,000 Years to close her set. And we're like, oh!
She does the Twilight song. Got it.
Yeah. It's exactly the same as the first time I saw Reliant K. I was like, who is this? And they played Marilyn Manson, He Ate My Girlfriend. I'm like, oh. I'm completely making that up. That's a joke. So as I was saying, some ska bands are dignified and serious. I'm not kidding. Like, I would say the more punk ones that maybe don't have horns, like Suicide Machines, very political. But then you have like Big D and the Kids Table, who orally sound very similar to Five Iron Frenzy. They're that like typical third wave ska punk sound. And they have some goofy, fun songs, not like super goofy, like Five Iron singing about pants, but Big D has some goofy songs. But then they have some very political songs. Dave from Big D and the Kids Table writes poetry and has a spoken word album and stuff. So he has like a certain poetic sense to his lyrics that comes through. So does Reese Roper. They're very. Rancid. I'm not putting down one to put up the other. Yes, Rancid. They have that ska compilation.
Yeah.
On another ska band, the Insiders. You remember the Insiders? Jessica knows the Insiders.
I do, because the Insiders was the only ska band specifically that I was familiar with. It was also the only other Christian-specific band outside of Reliant K that I was familiar with when Danny and I first met.
Well, the Elms, right?
Oh, and the Elms.
But you didn't know they were Christian.
I didn't.
Until recently.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I'll get so when Jessica met me, and we've told this story when we met each other, and I was like, "Who's your favorite band?" And she's like, "You won't know them. They're called Relient K." I'm like, "Oh, I know Relient K. Blah blah blah." And all that. Then at some point I was like, "Oh, I also love ska music," and she's like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it sounds like this," and she's like, "No, I don't know what that means." It's like, "Oh, you ever heard of this band, that band?" She's like, "No, I don't know." At some point, somehow, we realized she knew who the Insiders was. I'm like, "That's ska music."
Yeah, because I had Scalleluja 1 and 2.
And I'm like, "What did you think the title meant? The fact that they put the word ska at the beginning of Hallelujah."
I didn't know I called it Scalleluja. I didn't know what it meant.
Because the one guy on the cover is wearing a scally cap. That's right.
Maybe.
And this is...
I knew. Here's the thing. When I was like a kid, I was really into the Disney Channel original movies, and Brink was my favorite.
And that was Suicide Machines.
Yeah, so I was like, I like that like beachy rock music with horns. I like that, but I didn't know what it was called. And again, I was a little bit of a technophobe, so like I wasn't going on the internet to look into music. I didn't know. I was just like, I like this kind of music, and then moved on with my life. Like I didn't dive into it.
Well, our crossover guests, I guess we're going to be their guests technically too, but they're almost ready.
Okay.
But the last thing I was going to say was Rancid has a compilation of all their ska songs called All the Moon Stompers. And the cover is this cartoony drawing of a ska party. And this is a recent compilation, like in the last 4 years. And when I saw that cover for that Rancid Ska Greatest Hits, I was like, they're ripping off the cover of Scalleluja by the Insiders, because both Scallelujas is like a ska party.
Right.
Except it was like a Christian ska party with a pastor standing in the middle.
I kind of knew who Rancid was because of Gilmore Girls.
Oh, right. We'll have to post that clip. Her Asian friend, what's her name?
Yeah, Lane.
Yeah. So that's our so that's our opening sketch this week. And now time to get to the crossover.
Five Iron Frenzy. They were good, they were good, they were really, really, really good. Five Iron Frenzy. When you see them, we really, really think you should.
I'm so embarrassed. I just full on snorted.
That's fine.
Oh, wait, Danny.
Yeah.
Do you hear that? It's the phone ringing.
Oh, we're going to do that again. This was Jessica's idea, and we're going to do it again. Yes, I hear the phone. Let's go answer it.
Five Iron Frenzy. They were good, they were good, they were really, really, really good. Five Iron Frenzy. Yeah, when you see them, we really, really think you should.
So, anyway, yeah, so here we are with Andrew and John from Magnified Pod.
Yo.
That's my proper introduction.
No, hold on a second. We need to we need to do this. We need to do
pull
this
up some
right.
proper sound effects here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. If we're gonna do this how we always do it. All right, let's get that intro again.
So here we are, joined on Sadie Hawkins Pod by Magnified Pod.
Yeah. Finally.
Yes.
Worlds uniting.
This has been a long time coming. I feel like we started talking about this when you guys first launched your
Right.
podcast.
Which has almost
And-
been a year.
Yeah, before we even launched our second season, we were
Right. You
talking
had announced
about
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, name a more iconic team up. I'll wait. I don't know.
Andy Verdecchio and Matt Thiessen. I don't know. That was a pretty. That was a pretty. That
We'll
was
get there. We'll get
Did
there.
you guys find something, or I don't know what that's in reference to?
No, the
Tea Party.
amazing, Tea Party sketch.
Oh, yes.
Just wait.
Yes.
well, yeah.
You haven't seen that yet, right?
No.
Okay. So so Jessica, luckily we're doing this on Zoom, and you can see just who is who, right?
Yes, I can see who is who.
Because Jessica's never really listened to your podcast.
Oops.
Rude. Rude.
This is the
Danny,
second time this has happened.
I know.
It's like just a live
It's called-
bus toss.
Yeah.
That's a weekly. You guys have segments. You have your games, and you have the 5. We have the bus toss with Danny.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I know she's not a huge MXPX or 5 Iron fan. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Reliant K is in her wheelhouse, and Jess always on the table. If you want to do a spin-off Weird Al podcast with me,
Yes.
then that's always an option.
Yeah.
There's a robust Weird Al podcast community I've discovered.
I don't doubt that.
Because I just listened to one. It's like the Weird Alphabet, where they go alphabetically. And they're here in Los Angeles. I've never communicated with them. I'm just saying they're here. But then they have other people from other Weird Al podcasts on their podcast all the time. And I'm like, how many more Weird Al podcasts are there?
That doesn't surprise me at all. I feel like the Venn diagram of podcasters and Weird Al fans is like pretty substantial.
Yeah. If you're even comedy podcast adjacent, you're gonna have somebody who's like a giant Weird Al fan. I think that's just the odds are in your favor.
Yeah.
So, Jessica had saved. We did our opening part, but Jessica decided to save this for when we all got together. You wanted to talk about how you feel about Fire and Frenzy, right? And where your fandom is. And
again, with throwing me under the bus.
You said this is not throwing you under the bus. This is putting you on the bus, saying, "Here's the bus, honey. This is you." It was scheduled. You said you wanted to talk about.
So Jess, I just want you to know Reese listens to our podcast. So tell me how much you hate his band.
No, actually, I like Fiverr and Frenzy. I prefer them live because they play a little faster and a little more rockin' live, and I like the Canada song a lot. That's like the only song I listen to.
But she only listens to. There happen to be two. There's that's on both live albums, so she gets to listen to either of those. But then she'd hear the studio version, and she'd be like, "I don't like this one."
You know what's interesting? I'm gonna side with Jess here for a second, because we did when we covered All the Hype, which is not a record that John and I are kind of lukewarm on in general. That there are some songs on there that we really do enjoy, but some of the songs on that record have become live staples that I really enjoy live. But if I'm gonna throw on a 5-iron record, All the Hype is probably not going to be it. But when those songs come on at the live show, I'm like, all right, I'm into it.
Yeah.
So
see, you're supported.
I very much enjoy them live.
Yeah.
So I do want to say that. Yeah.
We've seen them live. I've taken Jessica to see Fire and Frenzy live multiple times, but there have also been times where fate has stopped her from going. So one time when we were living in Chicago and they played in Joliet.
Oh yeah.
We planned to go with Real Big Fish and Biebs and her moneymaker. We planned to go, and then Jessica had an appendicitis scare that day.
Oof.
Yeah.
And it was not appendicitis, but it was,
thankfully.
but we went to the hospital, and we're sitting at the emergency room, and we're waiting for
Danny left to go to the show.
This is the Jessica
Put this
bus.
back on. Yes.
Oh my. Wow.
I have no doubt now that when
I had no plan to go. You told me to go.
I did, I wanted you to enjoy it, but I still feel like now.
And I had to book it to get to Joliet on time because
Yeah,
we
you
were
did.
getting close.
You failed that test, Dan.
Yeah.
When we have a child, he absolutely, if 5-iron Frenzy or MXPX are playing that night, he's like, listen, I can see the kid afterwards. I'm going.
5-iron played in my town, which is a suburb, Palatine, of Chicago. They played Dirty Nelly's, which is like our bar in town, the day that we were having a baby shower for my first kid. And I couldn't go because of that. So that wasn't like, it's not a baby being born, but I was like, oh man, is there any way I could duck out of this thing to go watch 5-iron? But I missed that one. Anyway.
Yeah. But then there was one other time, most recently when they played at the Glass House, the show where I got that recording of Reese welcoming everyone to your podcast. That same show.
Right. Thank you.
Jessica was supposed to go that night, but then she had to work.
Yeah.
So it's come on multiple times. And then since we've been here in LA, we've seen them multiple times actually.
Yeah.
We saw them open for MXPX twice, and then we saw them play not the Rainbow Room. What's the name?
Roxy.
The Roxy. We saw them play the Roxy.
It's cool.
Yeah. So she has seen them, but not as many times as I have.
Yeah.
All right.
You know,
So you're both huge fans.
Yes.
You know, it's kind of nuts. When we had our interview this last week with Tyson Paoletti from Tooth and Nail, and we talked with him and Jason from An Original Vinyl, talking about there was a period of time when the idea of MXPX and Five Iron Frenzy playing a show together was like have been just like the most ridiculous thing, because you know it was the MXPX All Stars and Five Iron had broken up, and so it's there was a period of time when that was like a kind of a far-fetched idea, but now it's like, of course Five Iron is opening for MXPX now. That's like that's been the case for like years now. That's just it's either Slick Shoes or Five Iron Frenzy. Those have been like essentially the MXPX house bands. They're the ones that are always kind of opening up for them. So, but I've unfortunately not been able to see any of the Slick Shoes. You know, they're you guys in California, you bastards. You're just you are so.
They come through like every MXPX plays a show here at least once a year. Sometimes 3 times a year, like when they played the Troubadour.
That's how I was really able to sell the Chicago move to Danny. Not Chicago, California move to Danny. I was like, Dan, you can see all the bands.
All the bands I can never
wanted to see and never got to.
Yeah.
He's like, done.
I think we talked about this a little bit on our podcast, but growing up in Massachusetts, for some reason, up until Christian punk sort of started to go more mainstream, most Tooth and Nail bands just avoided the New England area. At least by the time I got into all those bands. Like I would get in, once I got into all these Tooth and Nail bands in like 1998, I would go on all their websites. No, you know what? I think I talked about this on your podcast. Like, yeah, I did on the first time I was on your podcast when you were still talking about MXPX, and they just wouldn't come through. So I never got to see so many of my favorite bands. Like I loved Dogwood, I loved Value Pack. Like all of these, it took me a long time to see Goaty Hook live finally, but my point was like they wouldn't come through Boston. And so all of these bands I missed back then, I've got to see in the last 6 years, because they've all had these, if not full reunions, then these like mini reunion shows.
Right.
Like Dogwood had a small resurgence locally a couple years ago. And
I think we saw them with Five Iron Frenzy.
Yeah, we saw them with Five Iron Frenzy and MXPX, and then I saw them by myself with at the Chain Reaction. Yeah.
And I'm ready for that Craig's Brother record.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we got to see them recently too when they opened for the Slick Shoes live album show.
Oh man!
So I had never seen Craig's Brother, and then Craig's Brother got back together to open for Slick Shoes live taping.
Yeah. Did you donate to their Kickstarter for their new album?
I don't think I even heard about it, unfortunately. This is news to me.
Yeah,
I was 2 years old when I found out about it.
Yeah, it was. They're not pressing it to vinyl. It's just going to be like digital and CD. But
right.
I'm looking forward to it because the singles that they've released in the last year or so, I've been really into. But
so,
you guys are lucky.
You are lucky. Here's a question. So Reliant K. Okay, I'm a little with Reliant K the way that Jess is with Five Iron. Like, aware of them, certainly, saw them many times, never did the full deep dive. Like, they are still touring, yes?
They've been on a hiatus since
2016.
2017 is the last time they played live.
Okay, but have they played with Five Iron at all recently?
Yes. Oh, recently? Okay. No. Sorry, not
like
recently.
In the last 10 years or whatever.
Not that I know of. I mean, in my notes, there is that thing with like them all coming out on the stage with Switchfoot to sing "Live It Well."
Right.
Yeah, but I don't know what show that was. So they've played like a festival or something in the since Five Iron Frenzy reunion, but they haven't played like a show specifically for one or the other that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw Reliant K was on Five Iron's 2001 tour.
Right.
Was that Electric Youth or whatever?
Yeah.
I think that was them And so it was them, Reliant K, John Rubin, and Ace Troubleshooter, which is
okay.
quite a lineup.
We were talking about that tour before you joined, and I couldn't remember who the other two bands were, but that makes sense. Yeah.
His name is
John
Rubin. And you
Rubin.
have his word on it.
Yeah.
John Rubin, man.
He's,
I feel like every
phenomenal.
time we are not going to get him on the pod, but I will continue. I will continue to put out there in the podverse that just getting Kevin Max on our pod, because I don't know if you know, I'm standing Kevin Max these days. Are you familiar with?
You guys
No.
down with the DC talk?
Oh,
Are you
okay.
down with the DC talk?
It's kind of blasphemy to be Reliant K fans, Reliant K fandom. It's this like middle. There's a meme out there that's not mine, where it's like it's the handshake, the ultimate handshake from Predator, and it says Switchfoot fans on one arm, MXPX fans on the other, and then Reliant K in the middle. So the two of us definitely are part of the MXPX handshake in there. Like neither Jess nor I are really into the CCM music. Like
Right.
it's the same for me as like general pop. Like sure, there's some general pop top 40 radio songs that I like and some artists I might be interested in, and Jessica, same thing. But like we don't go listening to what's all the latest pop music, so we felt the same way when it comes to CCM music.
Yeah,
Well-
is Switchfoot CCM?
They're definitely closer to the CCM side than...
Because if so, that is the only CCM I've ever listened to.
But I would
and that's
also-
just because of Walk to Remember, the Walk to Remember soundtrack.
But I would also put Reliant K in the CCM like Venn diagram. They just happen to be also brushed up against the skate punk thing. But
Well,
sorry,
you need to check out Kevin Max, because he has broken off in a serious way from the remaining DC talk kind of theology and ideology. He has gone like way left and like very progressive, and he's like in our conversation, the reason he's kind of come up lately is because we've been going through Brave Saint Saturn, and we've always been sort of, we just did The Light of Things Hope for, and which has more of a space theme than the first Brave Saint Saturn record. And one of the things that John was lamenting, he's like, it's just kind of like hoping that there were more bleeps and bloops and not so much Matchbox 20 vibes. And Kevin Max put out a record called Romeo Drive. That's
He loves those bleeps and bloops.
Oh man, it's like this futuristic, like electronic bleepy bloopy record of like in the future, like 2079 or something. I'm like, this is the guy that was in DC Talk? This is blowing my mind.
This sounds great.
It is great.
Check it out. You should check out his Twitter
Yeah.
thread just for a window into that. Anyway, this is not
no.
talking DC talk.
But I want to. I did want to
DC
bring.
talking.
I did want to marry our one other thing that we were just talking about. So one of our new listeners, actually, this guy Robert Gay, he played trumpet with Matt Thiessen and the Earthquakes.
Right, he DM'd us. You told him to contact us, and he DM'd us, and I just replied to him, but we didn't even start talking yet.
Yeah. So I was like,
You're welcome. Get him on the pod.
Get him on the pod. He's a Cedarmont kid, played with Matt Thiessen. He's like kind of more in your in your fandom in that area. If he was, he probably has some Matt Thiessen stories, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but I want to ask you guys how, John, you were sort of touching on it, and I want to know about what Andrew thinks as well about your experience with Reliant K. Did you say everything you wanted to say about that, John? I feel like you did, but then we went off on something else.
No, more or less. I mean, I think what you're asking is when did I first hear of Reliant
Yes.
K?
When did you first hear of Reliant?
I'm sure it was the late 90s, but I don't think it was... I'm sure I was aware of them when I saw them in 2001. Maybe I'd even seen them before that, but that seemed kind of like the height of their, I mean, maybe, tell me if I'm wrong, but that seemed like when they were kind of at the peak of their relevance in the scene. Maybe not.
It depends on what scene you're talking about, because I would say in the sort of like Christian festival youth group scene. Like
Yeah.
they know, and that's not something that I think that when they got big with
Okay.
and they
okay.
were suddenly in Hot Topic, and they were
Sure.
you know, that's they got and they were on the radio.
Yeah,
and
that was 05.
they got signed to
04,
Capitol
05.
Records for their 5th album. Like
Okay.
they got. I was talking about this before you joined us. That there's a parallel to me with my, and I've brushed on this a little bit with MXPX meme stuff, but I have very specific theories about the relationship between MXPX and Blink-182, and that is that MXPX was a bigger band than Blink-182 up until Dude Ranch came out, and that chronologically people don't necessarily think of the fact that Life in General came out 2 years before Dude Ranch. So in my personal estimation, MXPX was a bigger band for that 2 years between Life in General and Dude Ranch.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, Blink-182 always had like a proper major behind them, and then MXPX didn't actually have a major behind them until Dude Ranch came out. So it just depends on your measure of which band is bigger. But there's a similar thing that I would say with Relient K and Five Iron Frenzy. That Five Iron Frenzy seemed at the time to sort of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of like take on Relient K a little bit as like a band that they kind of helped with, taking them on tour and kind of helped them find an audience.
Like mentor.
Mentor, yeah. And so especially with the Electric Youth Tour and like multiple festivals that I remember them both playing at. No, just Soulfest. I talk about Soulfest all the time, just Soulfest and other ones that I hear about online. But my point is, Five Iron Frenzy was bigger than Relient K while Five Iron Frenzy was around. But then Relient K got bigger than Five Iron Frenzy was
Sure.
when they were originally around.
Okay. Yeah, I think by the time they like crossed over or whatever and got bigger, I was already kind of checked out of the scene, so probably not paying as much attention. But yeah, for sure, the album that I know the best is The Anatomy of the Tongue in Cheek.
Right.
And I distinctly remember being in like a church maze / haunted house thing. And
A hell house?
well, it wasn't a hell house. It was more like we
Okay.
were crawling around in these tunnels, and they were piping in Sadie Hawkins dance through the maze. And I'm pretty
Okay.
sure that experience earns me like 20 points in Christian 90s bingo or whatever. But like, yeah, that's I feel like Sadie Hawkins, I mean, there's a reason you chose the name of your pod the way that you did, but I feel
Right.
like Sadie Hawkins dance was definitely like the height of my awareness of Relient K. So that's kind of where my story ends, I guess.
Okay.
My story began with the very first record. So
Nice.
when that came out,
Because that's me too.
yeah, I mean when it came out, I was in high school in 2000 when it dropped, and I was super into it, and I was with Relient K through 5 Scored and 7 years ago, and they kind of lost me with that record.
With 5 Score?
Yeah, and I know. You guys have talked about. You've covered some of the songs on that.
You're not
record.
into thrash metal? Come on, that's their metal album.
I'm.
Completely understandable. Completely
There's
understandable.
some. It's so the record. Matt writes. It got so syrupy and cheesy and like in the way that I think John has like this maybe some grating feelings towards certain kinds of emo. There's a particular kind of pop punk that I'm just like oh just calm down, Matt. He's just like, especially like, the song like Must Have Done Something Right or something like that. But like there's some like Come Right Out and Say It, or they're fine. But the album in general is just like it was too glossy, too poppy and syrupy for my liking.
That's basically what I was going to ask.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I you know what? This just popped in my brain, but did you guys ever listen to Reggie in the Full Effect?
Sure.
Yeah, there was a similar trajectory, and I actually called it before it happened, wai I was into Reggie and I know I was a Get Up Kids fan first, and Get Up Kids is obviously a very earnest band. But then when I heard those first 2 Reggie and the Full Effect albums, I loved them because they're goofy, but they also have like, they go back and forth. He goes back and forth between like some earnest songs and goofier songs, and then I called it to my friends. I'm like, watch what the album that ended up becoming Songs Not to Get Married To. I was like, watch whatever that album's going to be. It's going to be mostly earnest. And I was absolutely right. There are still a couple of joke songs on there. There's still a couple of his character songs. But everything in between is like really earnest and of a certain type. This isn't exactly what you're saying, but I feel a similar trajectory where it's like Relient K they could have earnest and serious stuff, then they had their goofy stuff. They were sort of more dynamic that way. And then with 5 Score, we were talking about it recently. We were talking about it with our song last week, where I was like, by 5 Score, they become a little bit more serious. And did they freeze? No, you didn't freeze.
No.
You were all
just
moving. You
enraptured.
were all holding so perfectly still.
I'm hanging on every word of this.
By 5 Score, they kind of like, their humor was still more or less there, but it was more like selective. Like where
Right.
they were a little goofier and more fun and more enjoyable and more for the nerds out there. By 5 Score, they became just like more of a, I don't know yet because we're still digging into that album, but I'm like, was it a thing where they were like, this is more palatable to the world at large who doesn't know where Relient K has come from up to this album?
Yeah.
They
Right.
definitely said it was their, like, of the time, it was their most poppy album. And then from there, they were like, but we promise the next record will be a rock record, was kind of how they put 5 Score out there.
Right.
And was it?
Wait,
the next record was Let It Snow, Baby.
Forget it, not slow down.
Typically.
Forget Not Slow Down.
Slow
Okay.
Down, yeah.
Well, and then I have a theory that, Forget Not Slow Down
which is kind of their
which
masterpiece.
is it's kind of their masterpiece in terms of artistic achievement. It is more of a rock record. It is more artistic. You know what I mean? It's like less concerned with pop appeal, but it actually works for that reason. It's probably got more mass appeal for that reason. But then I have a theory that Bird the B-Sides is actually a secret low-key full-length album. Because half that album is new material. You look at the cover of that and you think, oh, B-side collection. But then you look at the credits and you're like, 50% of this album is a brand new album that they recorded in the same session. So I believe that Bird and the B-Sides is a full-length, the first half of Bird and the B-Sides is a full-length album that for whatever reason, they were like, we don't want this to be our canon 6th album, so we're gonna pretend it's all a B-side collection.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Which brings us to today's episode.
that's right. Then as the album, that's right. So so what do you guys think of the song Five Iron Frenzy is Dead or Dying? And when did you first hear of the song Five Iron Frenzy is Dead or Dying?
I think I first heard of it when I started preparing for the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Same.
So I mean, this week wasn't the first time I heard it. I remember, when I started doing the initial research and re-listening to a lot of stuff, and I was like, oh, that's fun, and it smacks of just sort of classic Relient K, and then
Right.
the ska version is, in my humble opinion, the superior.
Right.
Of those 2 songs.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It makes sense that you feel that way. John, I'll ask you your opinion in a second. I'm sorry, John. But it makes sense that you feel that way, that it feels of that classic youth group version of Relient K, because the song dates back to their breakup. Like, they wrote it for the 2003 breakup,
Right.
and they played it all that year. That whole, like, celebratory year of Five Iron Frenzy breaking up.
Right.
Like, Relient K basically joined in with it and wrote that song and I remember hearing it multiple times that summer because I saw Relient K and Five Iron Frenzy. Well, I saw Relient K more. I saw Five Iron Frenzy 2 or 3 times that year. and yeah, they played it multiple times, and then they put it on a 7-inch in December 2002, and then that's why it's on the B-side collection. So most people didn't hear about it until well after Five Iron Frenzy was already dead, not just dying but dead.
Sure.
So yeah, I was. That's why it feels that. That's why I might feel that way of that classic goofy youth group Relient K, is because that is when that song comes from. It's from 2002.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
It feels very. I mean, it's like very in the spirit of Five Iron. It's very silly. He talks about Reese being in a speedo, which feels very
Right.
Five Iron. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I was preparing for this episode, and we were DMing, and I was like, "Well, I guess I got to listen to the song now." And you're like, "It's 40 seconds." So, so I really did my research, listened to it a few times. No, but I mean, I don't know. I definitely owe Reliant K a deeper dive, especially if they're more. I mean, I guess it's not recent anymore, but like anything, post 2009 or whatever, I definitely haven't heard at all. So A, I'm eager to hear you guys dive in more on your pod, and B, I'm eager to check that stuff out. But I feel like the sillier Reliant K is definitely the one that I knew more of. So it kind of feels on brand for that. But like, yeah, for some reason, I know you guys were talking about, what's it called? The complex emotions of the female mind.
Yeah, the complex infrastructure known as the female mind.
We always have it on our kitchen table at all times.
Yeah.
But now I don't see it.
You live your marriage by those rules, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, for some reason I was very aware of that book. I think it's because I worked in a Christian bookstore, and so I saw it, and it was Bummer Town for me.
Yeah.
And it was like, between that and the sort of gender politics of like mood rings and stuff, I was just like, I don't know, like,
right.
So it's, the Five Iron song is kind of like in keeping with that tradition, but I know that they are not just silly. I know that there's other stuff. Although I will say, and this is totally unrelated, I'm very eager for you guys to dive into what have you been doing lately.
Okay. Did we do that?
You did it? No, I don't think you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. We did do that. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
it was a great episode, and I never forgot about it. Okay.
It's interesting because that's Justin and Vanessa, and we still talk about Justin and Vanessa all the time.
Yeah. Justin, he developed his taste for Coors Light, Miller Lite, or whatever.
Yeah.
I thought I was like breaking in some hilarious new element of your podcast, but this is well trod ground already. Anyway, I'll go back and listen to that one. But
it's over there.
Just kind of like you're drinking. There you go. Drinking Miller Lite. What happened to your salvation? Like that was kind of the vibe I had of them at the time.
It's such a bummer.
Yeah.
But yeah, Five Iron and MXPX are like they feel different from that sort of judgy vibe generally. So I think it was just kind of like, I don't know if these dudes are for me, but I need to more fully absorb their whole oeuvre.
Yeah, I figured out a sort of trajectory of the band recently, and I don't know if this is 100% true if you were to ask Matt Thiessen or Reliant K, but in general, especially as we've looked more at their demo, All Work and No Play, I've gotten this sense that from early on, aside from the fact that they have that Matt Thiessen and the band as a whole have a very unique voice together, I kind of have this feeling now that when Reliant K started, they were like, let's start a Christian punk band.
Right.
Because MXPX did not say, they said, let's start a punk band and we'll sing about Christian stuff because that's what we know a lot about. And Five Iron Frenzy said, let's start a Skank and Pickles style band and we'll sing about Christian stuff because that's what we know. But I think Reliant K was like, let's start a band that can get signed to Tooth and Nail. And there's a lyric in their demo where they say Brandon Evil just gave us a call. So it's like they said, let's start a Christian punk band. And I think it took a couple albums for them to shake 100. By their self-titled album, they had shaken some of that, but I think they still had some of that in their roots. And then by the third or fourth album, they had fully gone past that. So I think he wrote a lot of the songs on the first two albums before they were signed. So I think that's why when you listen to their early albums, you might still get that kind of sense of let us write Christian punk songs, and that's why they might come off a little judgy because of that reason.
Sure.
Yeah, that is something that we talk about quite a bit. The especially with Five Iron, the pointing the finger at yourself rather than the pointing the finger at everybody else and what, and that's what I think a lot of that early
Reliant K stuff was, my girlfriend and
Right.
what have you been doing lately, and things that are just like, you're all sinners and you've changed, man. You're
Yeah.
what it's just like, it just makes you feel kind of like it's for one particular kind of audience, and because there aren't going to be too many non-Christian people that are going to listen to that and be like, oh yeah, I can really identify with this.
Right.
It's just like, as opposed to some 5 Iron MXPX songs that they're just bangers because they're bangers.
I guess I walked both worlds, and I talk about I try to voice this, and it's not been easy to exactly explain, but like, I was not raised in what I understand now as the fully like evangelical world. Like, my parents were just Protestant. My parents were Catholics who became Protestant, and the idea of evangelical was not something that they learned about. And it wasn't until years later that like I went to these sort of like cool hip youth groups, which were actually like evangelical, and then kind of got my parents to go to those schools, and then go to those churches associated with those schools and youth groups. And so then they kind of like backdoor through their son ended up part of like an evangelical church world.
It's your fault.
It's
Danny.
my fault.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dan.
I know. So because my parents didn't raise me in that kind of like strict Christian environment, I was able, and when they didn't like me listening to secular music, they didn't think of it as secular music. They just thought of it as dirty music. They're like, we don't want you listening to dirty music. So like, I could walk both worlds. So when I hear really judgy Christian songs, or I hear really dirty punk songs, they would both kind of like roll off my back like water. I was like, this is not a problem for me. And it is until I became an adult and got more concept of the world in general, and like started to understand other people, how they were raised and other things. I was like, I can listen to a song like What Have You Been Doing Lately and be like, oh, he's judging that girl because she's got a hard time in her life. Because particularly in that song, Vanessa, like Justin, yeah, he goes to college in What Have You Been Doing Lately. Justin goes to college and he comes back as a bro party dude. And that's obnoxious, because that kind of guy sucks no matter whether you're a Christian or not. Matt Thiessen's just singing about it through the lens of being a Christian and like, hey, what happened to your salvation? You're a total dude bro and it sucks. But then when he talks about the girl in that song, it's like, she's got a lot of problems and she doesn't know what's going on with her life, and she's confused and seems erratic all the time. What happened to your salvation? It's like, well, why don't you just like... And I don't know if it's really Matt Thiessen really felt that way, or if it's just like the way the song kind of wrote itself because of the world they came up in. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Well, also, there was some sort of like sexualized element because there's something about her sweater too.
Right.
Yeah. Her
Her rationality shrunk with
low
her
cut
sweater.
and tight, yeah.
Sick burn.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and to cap this part off, though, we recently talked about the song, which is also ska themed, like What Have You Been Doing Lately? The lining is silver, because it has some upstroke stuff. And we realized that song, in our opinion, is about deciding not to judge other people any longer. Because the lining that's silver he talks about, a bunch of like fan videos we found, people thought like the lining is silver is just about like, hey, life's not so bad, the lining is silver. But when you actually dig into the song, the lining is silver is people, and he's singing about how no matter what choices people make in their lives, their lining is silver. All our lining is silver. We're all gold. We're all worthy of love. Including, he's turning it in on himself in that 5 iron way, and he's looking at people and their mistakes and saying, I don't need to judge that any longer. So I think, and that's on this album that we're talking about, Burden the B-Sides. So like this album is kind of a turning point in that theme for that early version of Reliant K.
Okay.
So, Danny, I need to know then, are you able to not judge me based on my hot takes on the origins of ska music?
That's right.
You learned it from Matt Thiessen, not to judge you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, Reliant K created ska music with What Have You Been Doing Lately and
That's
Lining
true.
is Silver.
undisputed. The first wave beginner there. No.
So all that. So yeah. So now I got you captive, and I can talk about this. No, I'm not going to delve that in.
This has been an intervention to talk to me about why fourth wave ska is not a thing.
Well,
never mind. Let's not go.
I was just gonna. The only thing I want to say is, Jess, how often do you have to hear about waves in your house? Like, is it pretty consistent?
probably not that often. Do I talk to you about that?
It's relatively often. It's definitely like if he's gonna talk about a band, he's like, it's this wave ska or it's this wave ska. And I'm like, I don't care and I don't know the difference.
Okay, but I think you saved
like,
your most vitriolic energy for us.
I let me apologize to Andrew, because when you guys talked about Operation Ivy and your Operation Ivy tattoo, I was less talking about you loving Operation Ivy than the fact that there had been a thing online, and I refer to it as Wikiality, that people were like, Operation Ivy invented ska punk. I have different theories on that. I won't get into it. I'm not getting into it.
All you have to do is go back a few episodes of Magnified Pod to listen to your 6 voicemails that you left.
Right.
He left 6 voicemails? What?
No, it was at least
like 3.
It was at least
maybe.
it was like 3 or 4 voicemails.
Well, if you disagree, you can call our voicemail, which is 402-95-SADIE, and give your take on why there is or isn't a fourth wave of ska.
I am legit fascinated in this and do want to come to your TED Talk about it at some point. But
Well, I feel like if there's an appropriate time, now that we're finally on your podcast, you should check out Magnified Pod. You can call us at 872-762-4763, 872-7-MAG-POD, where we discuss the entire discography of Five Iron Frenzy. You can check out our first season where we discuss MXPX. I feel like I needed to do that after all the plugging.
You didn't cut him off during that.
Well, I can edit that right out for our version.
Yeah, that's true.
Or bleep it. We bleep stuff, so.
Brady, if you like Five Iron or MXPX, head on over to our pod and give us money. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Well, I think we're finally going to get to talking about this song. We talked about it a little bit. But yeah, so Five Iron, we were starting to talk about it, and then we got on a tangent.
I just want to say I'm super concerned, and I keep looking at the time for Andrew because I know that the Parks and Rec reunion is happening tonight, and I keep looking at our time.
We already
watched it, right?
We already
Oh,
watched
good,
it.
you got it already.
Okay.
That's right, time change. Okay, I was super nervous.
No.
It was on at
Okay.
7:30
Shoot.
our time.
That
Yeah,
was nice.
okay.
I remember that living in Chicago, we could watch like all our shows at 7 o'clock and be like, bedtime.
Yeah, it's nice.
True.
Yeah.
I appreciate the concern, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
So, so we talked about the song a little bit, but yeah, you said Andrew, you like the ska version. You find that superior to the pop punk version.
Yeah, I mean they're both fine, but I feel like if you're going to do an homage, so to speak, to Five Iron Frenzy, the ska version just makes the most sense,
Right.
and it just sounds really clean and it's fun, yeah. And I it's not that I dislike the pop punk one. It just sounds like something that they were probably messing around in the studio with, and they're like, let's just throw this, haphazard garbage together, and it just not that it's garbage, but it's not like they're not reinventing, a pop punk song.
Right.
It reminds me of like the Kickoff. That sort of just like,
Right.
This is a sort of standard short song, and it's fine.
Yeah. To be fair, they played both of these versions before it was released on that 7-inch. For that year leading up to Five Iron's breakup, they were playing both the ska version and they like mixed them through the set. Or did they play them back to back? I don't remember. I only found one Cornerstone 2003 live version. That was on the playlist that I sent you guys, the notes. I remember like they played it at Soul Fest. They played it at shows they did that year with other bands. And I guess I could look at Setlist FM, but I don't trust Setlist FM for the early 2000s. I just remember they played the pop punk version and the ska version, and then they recorded both of them for the 7-inch. Okay. And yeah, so I don't know, maybe they depended on the crowd. Maybe they were like, hey, this crowd doesn't really care about Five Iron Frenzy or ska music. This is more of a CCM crowd, so we're going to play this pop punk version.
Sure.
You know, in a way, it's like they, since they're like 40 seconds long, they should just play them anyway. Just play them both.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
What are they going to do? It's like the song's already over.
So when this record came out, were you guys into it? Like, Danny, were you excited that the song was on it?
I was, yeah. We talked about it at the top of the show, but I didn't buy this 7-inch when it came out in 2002 because I didn't have a record player. I owned a couple of records as collector's items, but I was like, and you couldn't. I don't remember if I'd found it on a Relient K merch table, I probably would have gotten it, but I don't remember seeing it on a merch table. I think it was just sold through their website in 2002, 2003. Okay. So eventually, and people ripped it pretty quickly. So I had an MP3 from Napster or something, or LimeWire or whatever. Yeah, and including like there's a song that's also there. Both other songs that are on this vinyl countdown. And something else that I can't remember. Oh, well. Our copy's over there underneath a pile of very curiously. There you go. Thank you.
So what we're getting from your podcast is that you're criminals.
Yes.
It's not very...
Just Danny's a criminal, not me. Don't drag me into it.
It was only on a 7-inch from 2002 to 2008. So yeah, I was happy that when this album came out,
back when crimes didn't matter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It was okay to steal a car back.
Yes.
You wouldn't steal a car.
You wouldn't steal a Dermike, would you?
Of course I would. Yeah. So these are the reprints of that vinyl. These are not the actual 2002 copy, but yeah, Nothing Without You and the Vinyl Countdown, which are also on that B-side collection. Jessica was super happy when the B-side collection came out.
I was, yeah.
And I was happy for a bit, and then I realized that they had like kind of remixed the tracks on there, and I was already familiar with most of those B-sides from the EPs and stuff and my illegally downloaded MP3s. So I was like mad that they had messed with perfection in my eyes.
That was like a staple in my CD player because I had never heard any of the EPs at that point. So I was like, this is great. It's all new Relient K music for me.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then I find it funny that and I know for a fact because I've seen it multiple times on Twitter and I even seen in like Five Iron Frenzy CD reviews that people have heard about Five Iron Frenzy because of this song being on this B-side collection in 2008. So a lot of people discovered Five Iron Frenzy in 2008 when there was no like chance of when the dark days of there never being a reunion, like when it was he'd rather eat a bowl of mayonnaise or whatever than ever get back together. And that's how people found the band. I actually started to get mad about this B-side collection because I was realizing how many people had never heard these songs until 2008, and I'm like, this song has been around for a decade.
Yeah, I think
hardcore fan.
Yeah, John. I remember when we covered the MXPX when they did their, I think it was maybe 10 years in running, where they remixed Teenage Politics, and I remember we covered it, and John's like, no, I want it to sound bad. I don't want it to sound. Yeah.
Well, then they did that new version of Let It Happen, and that does sound bad. It sounds much worse than the real
it sounds
version.
Worse.
Yeah.
It sounds worse. When it starts with the bass, I'm just like, no, I don't want it to. I don't want it to start that way.
Right.
You nailed it the first time.
When you first heard it is how you want to hear it usually.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I feel like that's like the beginning and end of my takes on the song.
Okay.
I'm very curious to hear where else we'll go. Help me explore it.
Do you guys listen to songs ever? I mean, I know you maybe play a little clip or something, right? But do you ever like play
the song leading up to us doing the episode? Or what do you mean?
Or like, how do you do you listen to any of the songs in the...
You mean like play the audio of it?
Yeah, right.
Oh, on the show?
Yeah.
No. And we just don't do that we play a little clip at the top. And then if we need to talk about a certain section, we'll play some more of it. Yeah, you guys like play a little bit of every song that you talk about.
Right.
We don't typically necessarily start playing the song in the background while we're talking about it. We'll listen to it on our own getting ready to do the episode, and then we'll just start talking about the song, and we leave it up to the listeners to go listen to the song on their own if they don't know what we're talking about.
Is that a subtweet of our podcast,
Or yeah,
you don't like the way that we do things?
No, I don't know. It just
I'm just kidding. Andrew, it was funny the way that you asked it was like, do you guys ever listen to songs?
the songs like, yeah, we do. I thought
No,
the same
I mean,
thing.
I just
I listen to songs
They're kinda
all the
like-
time.
Yeah.
3 or 4 minutes in length usually. Like played on instruments.
all right, you guys. I was just trying to, because I was thinking like, Blink 155, they like
Right.
would only ever play like 5 or 10 seconds at the beginning of the episode, and I don't know if that's like kind of. I feel like that's kind of what you guys.
That's where because I took their format, and basically we took their format and we started reworking it slowly over how it fit for us. So yeah, I was just like not playing the songs because I was also not wanting to get too much content ID happening when you're on Spotify. If you play things that are too big, they just take the episode down without telling you. And
Right.
If that's happened, we don't even know yet. But
we also can't talk from a musical standpoint. We
Right.
can only be like, well, this is how this song makes me feel.
Yeah.
And I like these lyrics because, like,
Yeah.
we can't talk a lot about, like, oh, well, the guitar is really good because they do this, this, and that. Like,
yeah, I even I've never talked about this, but I even edit the podcast in a certain way that when we start talking about covers or if we decide to play back a certain section of the song to talk about it specifically, I do harsh cuts for the audio. I've never talked about this on the show, but I do harsh cuts for the audio, like song starts, song stops, we start talking, then song starts, song stops, we start talking. I never do fades because I have this thing in the back of my mind where I'm like, if anyone sends us a cease and desist at any point, I can just go in and clip those out and then re-upload the episode. Right. Because this actually happened to a friend of mine's podcast
that Danny used to be on.
I would appear on his. My friend of mine had a comic book podcast, and I guess I should be not. There's no way they'd ever find out. Like, listen to this Reliant K podcast, and we'll finally get the answer to that. But they used something that was copywritten in a lot of episodes, faded in and out, and got a big cease and desist letter, and like.
With a harsh fine.
With a harsh fine
that they couldn't
edit it out because they had all these fades, so they just had to take down the whole archive of the podcast.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was ever since then, even though I don't think Goatee Records or anyone, Goatee Records likes our posts and stuff, so it seems like they are fine with us being around. Sure. But whatever else I drop into the podcast, I'm like, I would rather be able to just go into the existing file and clip it out and then just re-upload it with no explanation of why there's no track we're talking about.
Right.
Sure. Then have to go back into the raws, re-edit the whole episode. Because they wanted to do that. My friend's comic book podcast wanted to do that, but the massive work of going into however many episodes, finding the raws, doing all that, they were just like, they washed their hands of the whole project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, so that's why we do this way. I mean, I guess if Mike Carrera ever comes, if Tom Chichilla ever comes after you from a copyright standpoint, and it's like, you owe us this much money for all the MXPX clips, you could just take those down and put them in like put them behind the Patreon paywall or something.
Right. Well, I mean, that you're more right that Tom C would definitely.
He did mention it when he left his 10-minute diatribe, maybe more than 10-minute diatribe on our podcast. He's like, we're cool with you guys playing it, even though it's an obvious infringement of copyright. But, I mean, I guess that's the nice thing about Five Iron is they own all their own stuff now, so
right.
They're good with it.
So, Jess, I want to hear some of your thoughts on these Reliant K 5 Iron tracks. Which one do you like the most?
I like the ska one better.
That's
for
right.
Starters. Yeah. And then I do. So it wasn't my introduction to Five Iron Frenzy because when I met Danny, I had only ever heard of I didn't grow up with being like, you have to listen to like non-secular music or whatever versus secular. It was just, I happened to fall upon the Insiders because my mom was at Family Christian Bookstore one day and I was like, oh, this looks like fun. Can I get this? And she was like, yeah, sure. So I got Scalleluja and then later I got Scalleluja 2. I think,
Right.
is kind of how it went.
Yeah.
And then, so that
That's
was
the order of them.
That's the order of them. That was the only introduction I had to
But she didn't know what Ska-Hallelujah meant. She
Yeah,
didn't
I did
understand. She was just like, oh, it's a weird title. She didn't
Yeah.
know it was referencing ska.
Nope.
So I told her what ska was at the time, and I was like, look, there will never be a fourth wave.
It was definitely so.
There's no need to worry about a fourth wave. We're already in the fifth wave.
Danny
These
had
were
this,
part of this. This was part of your wedding vows, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Please
Like,
be
I
in
won't
the
hog the
fifth wave with me
remote.
forever.
And yeah. I won't hog the remote, and there's only 3 waves of ska.
Yeah.
I do.
Is this
You
the
are
moment that
the
we-
we are coming together much like the two-tone comes
Yes.
together, blending.
Like the white and the black checkerboard.
Yes,
Yeah.
there you go.
The two-tone
Danny
becomes
had a
one.
checkerboard suit. Yeah.
Is this the moment where we can talk about what your license plate said, Danny? Have you talked about this on your?
Oh,
Yes,
that's
we
right.
can, because I learned mostly about all of these ska bands from Danny's junky old green Corolla with his license plate.
That said MA-ska because I loved the Boss Tones, Biggie and the Kids Table. I was like all about going to local bands, the Alstonians, all these like local ska bands, and I wanted like ska. Okay. I moved to New Hampshire, where vanity plates are a big deal. Like they put the vanity plate application form in front of you when you register in New Hampshire. They're like, please do this, give us the extra money, no problem. Like 60% of people in the 2000s in New Hampshire had vanity plates.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, I'll do one. I'm like, I look at ska, no, taken. Okay, ska, taken. Okay, ska, too long. And then eventually I just decided, okay, I specifically like Massachusetts ska as well. That's my favorite that's my
Side
favorite of the
note,
waves.
Because he had a New Hampshire plate, none of our friend group knew what that meant. So we called it Mosca. We're like Danny and his Mosca car because we didn't realize
Yeah.
it was MA for Massachusetts.
And my aunts thought it meant Ma's car, like my mom's car.
I mean, you're from Boston, so I guess that makes sense.
Right.
yeah.
Ma, it's your car. It's my
No.
ska.
I like it because it's clearly the first part of Massachusetts, which is what the full
Oh, yeah,
license
there you
plate
go.
would say. And
Good.
you're from Scottston.
Yeah.
You know what you could have. What if you like had some sort of form of like pick it up? That would have been an even better license.
I could have.
plate.
Yeah.
Then people would just be like, "Oh, he's like a dog walker. He just picks up."
That's your immediate. You immediately go from he's either talking about ska or picking up poop.
Yeah.
The two
But I
two
hope that
options.
it tied in.
Those
I
are the
hope
only
that it
two
tied
things
in.
one picks up.
My car was also plastered in punk and ska stickers, so I hoped that people. I was like, the only people who need to know what this means are the ones who are cool enough to know what it means.
Did you imagine like you'd be driving down the street and then like Dickie Bear would pull up next to you and you'd be like, hey, and then you'd be like, sweet.
I need a new dancing guy. You want to be that guy?
One time at college, because I took this car to Full Sail to Orlando, where we met in college. And one time, someone who must have seen my car around, but it wasn't a person I knew, he saw my car arriving, and they must have been like, "There's the guy. There's that guy with his Massachusetts ska plate." So they put on Impression That I Get, and they blasted it as they drove past me. It was like a fever dream, and to this day, I'm like, "Did that really happen?" And I'm like, "Yes, I guess it did."
That's amazing.
You know what's kind of nuts is I've met two people in the last like 6 months that have never heard that song.
Really?
And I'm just like, I just don't know how it's even
Are they-
possible.
Children? Or...
They are infants.
Okay, that makes sense.
no, they're in their late 20s, and so I'm like,
Jessica just had a reaction.
what?
She has a reaction to people being too young.
Yes, I do. Just in general.
She hates that. I don't let it
Yeah.
get me down, but Jessica hates that people are young nowadays.
I mean, I'm with you.
I mean, it's
Fantastic.
how
Look, if you're under 30, I don't want to talk to you. Like, what are you going to talk about? I don't know.
you're just so pretty much in this quarantine, Jess. Are you just yelling at people from your stoop? You love social distancing. You can just tell people to get off your lawn. You have your you have your Rona stick, beating people away. Like, get off my lawn. 6 feet.
Okay, so did you have a Reliant K sticker on your car, Danny?
I probably did. I don't remember. I'd have to go look at the pictures I have of it again.
Just wanted to make sure your cred was.
You have to go to your ska archive.
Yeah. It wasn't just ska bands on there. I remember the Real Big Fish sticker. There was a Reggie and the Full Effects sticker. I don't remember every sticker on there. I'd have to go look.
Is this Five Iron Frenzy related? He definitely had a Brave Saint Saturn shirt that he wore all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I may or may not have sold that.
No, you still have it.
I still have
saw
that one?
it recently.
Okay. I sold a bunch of my coolest shirts. I'm like, this has to find someone. I don't want this anymore, but I can't just give this away. It needs to find a proper home.
Sure. Well, we're knee deep in Brave Saint Saturn right now.
Yeah, I'll have to find that shirt. But yeah, my ska mobile. So yeah, Jessica had never she didn't really know what ska music was. She didn't know she liked the Suicide Machines because they were on the Brink soundtrack.
Yep.
But
Nice.
and then I finally
Soul
watched
skaters.
Brink. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I finally watched Brink with her. It's on Disney Plus now, but right before Disney Plus came out, she was like, "It's on Amazon Prime,"
yeah.
and she bought it. And then I was like, "Oh, this is the Suicide Machines."
And then he
She's
was
like,
giggling
"Whatever."
too much during it. I was like, "You're gonna ruin this. I can't watch anymore with you." It's a perfect movie.
The perfect movie. Oh man, so many Disney Channel. That was like the glory days of the Disney Channel original movie.
Yeah.
Those
Smart
were
House, Luck of the Irish, Brink.
She knows them all.
What about the Paper Brigade?
Yes, yeah, so
I heard that one.
good.
Yeah,
Alley Cats Rule, yeah.
Yeah, the Paper Brigade. That was the one with Gunther Wheeler, this kid who's he had this weird tree house, and there was trying to get this paper route, and there were all these there's this really weird crazy Civil War reenactor guy on their block.
Yes, I think about that movie all the time, and I can never completely remember the name of it. I love that movie so much. Paper Brigade. Yes.
Yeah,
I thought it was Paperboy, but yeah, I love it so much.
It's such. I mean, you talk about fever dreams. Some of these old Disney movies, you're just these are, yeah.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I had a friend who recently was she got Disney Plus, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, have any of you watched The Color of Friendship?" And it's a very unfortunate Disney movie where they're trying to be inclusive, but it's unfortunate. And she was sending us short videos of her watching it, and it was
it's called The Color of Friendship. It's about a white girl and a black girl becoming friends in the 90s.
So unfortunate.
What a radical message to send to kids in the 90s.
I'm waiting for there to be some sort of message that just sort of that there's some sort of erasure of racial identity. It's it doesn't matter what you are or something. It's I'm colorblind, which was definitely the pervasive messaging on race in the 90s for children.
Were you expecting to get into deep dive on racial justice on this episode?
Well, it's a crossover with Magnified Pod, so
yeah,
of course.
I mean,
wherever we go, we just
bring some.
We gotta bring the real talk and the bullet
nonsense for an hour.
and the bullet train to Bummersville.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you want to go from racial justice to a very fitting transition, which is this Tea Party short.
Yes.
They're not related at all.
I've never seen this. Wow.
I'm showing Jessica.
What is this?
So, okay, on Fiverr,
Oh
to explain for everyone out there, especially Reliant K fans who might not know about this listening, Fiverr and Frenzy, during their breakup, came out with their DVD. And it was a compilation of this way too long documentary, 3-hour documentary, which could easily be cut down to 80 minutes of Fiverr and Frenzy's history. And then there's a ton of special features in there with their music videos and other concert footage. Their whole last show is on there. and a bunch of like short films that Reese Roper made in his spare time.
This is so Lynchian.
And so this one is called Tea Party. It's on the Five Iron Frenzy DVD, and Reese Roper directed it. It's
He like edited it,
Matt
directed
T-
it, wrote it, produced
Yeah.
it.
I assume, and I don't know this for certain, but I assume it's like they were probably playing at a church in 2001 for the Electric Youth Tour. If it wasn't exactly that, it was probably something similar.
This is for
and
sure
they
a
went
church
to the
nursery.
nursery in the church
Yeah.
that they were playing at, and we're like, let's just make a short film for the hell of it. And it is Andy Verdecchio, Micah Ortega from Fire and Frenzy, and Matt Thiessen sitting around a little kid's like play table.
A very small table for these
Yeah.
for these three large men.
Yes, having a tea party with these little baby dolls.
And there's
then,
other people in the background.
yes, and that's why I think my theory on its creation is true, because you see who I have to assume. I think this was filmed in Wisconsin. I think it's at the end. It tells you where it was filmed, what church, what town it was filmed in. You see people who have to be like church workers at this church they were playing at.
Looking
Yeah.
horrified.
Just walking around like, what are these guys doing? But
Yeah.
they probably because for the Electric Youth Tour, I saw it twice. Once in Boston at a proper rock club, and the second night in New Hampshire at a church.
This took
which,
a twist I was
when
not
I first
expecting.
saw,
Blood. Sorry. He's playing
when I
it for
first
me.
saw the Tea Party short, part of my like heart hoped that this was filmed at the Bridge Church in Manchester, New Hampshire, because it could have been. I've talked about this show before. It was during the Electric Youth Tour. It was a church where they played, where Fire and Frenzy and Relient K played. They had like bought the bar next to the church. It was a church in an old industrial park, and they bought the bar next to it and turned the bar into like a coffee house where they had the show that night. And then eventually security would just kind of like leave for the night because they were all like volunteers from the church. So I stuck around long enough that I just got to start walking around the church, and there's Fire and Frenzy just walking right there. There's Ace Troubleshooter. And I'm just walking around bothering everyone, and they can't do anything about it because there's not real security guards hired for this night.
Oh, I was security on multiple 5 Iron tours, so that is a true statement.
So I
It
wish.
says filmed on location in Mulligan's Harbor, Michigan at
Okay.
Coast Guard Fest.
Yeah.
So that's a thing.
Wow, Coast Guard Fest.
So suddenly everything. So Jessica was saying this is Lynchian. It starts with those
Lynchian,
three.
yes.
Yeah. It starts with those three guys having a little tea party with some baby dolls, and then
Yeah.
suddenly they're all covered in blood and their
Yeah.
eyes are bleeding, and just everything goes
amazing.
wrong.
They're all
love this.
screaming.
And again, church volunteers are just walking
in the
around in the background.
And you can
Wow.
see some of them sort of like laughing because it is an absurd video. Part of me was like wondering, like, because Andy has sort of like also a dark sense of humor. He wrote he's written some some like horror stories like for children, and I'm like I wonder if this is like also like the brainchild of Andy, because it just seems also kind of in his wheelhouse of sort
It
of
seems very Andy. It seems very Reese.
Are you saying this is like Poltergeist, where people think Spielberg secretly directed it? You're saying you think Andy secretly directed this film, but Reese Roper got it for the DGA
For the DGA
credit?
credit,
Toby Hooper is the Andy Verdecchio?
Yes.
that's a deep cut.
Yeah. So, yeah, this thing, it just never stops. It keeps going. It's really something. Directed by, photography by, editing, sound by Reese. I assume this was shortlisted for Oscar that year for
Right.
short films.
absolutely.
But yeah, Andrew, this kind of feels like something you would have done, like your morning announcement videos.
Yeah.
They took a slightly darker turn. Could have easily gone there.
Well, I did do a morning announcement video that was very long about somebody that was part of our video production crew who graduated, and then we the next year made this sort of tribute to him where we were trying to find a replacement for him. And then at the end of the video, we had like this shrine that we made to him that we were sad that he left, and we're like trying to find his replacement. But by the end of the video, we couldn't find anybody who was good enough. And so the end of the video is us just like tearing these effigies of him off the wall and like crying in agony and like all set to a Sum 41 song, actually.
Nice.
I mean,
Nice.
That sounds like something you should post on our feed. But there was no ketchup blood involved.
Right.
In that one.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
Yeah.
I am slowly making my way through the Rise and Fall DVD and all of its extras, and it's quite something.
I want to start getting into the other clips that we have. There's no cover. No, there's one cover. But one thing I want to say about the Fire and Frenzy DVD, when Reese directed and edited it together, I was like, okay, here's the 10th time the band's being introduced in the documentary. I feel like 2 of those in the documentary is enough. It's like another, ladies and gentlemen, 5 Iron Frenzy. I get it. I even understand if the documentary was 2 hours long and you fill it with a lot of raw footage because it's for the fans. But some of that raw footage gets very monotonous compared to what you've already seen in the previous 2 hours. And then you still have an hour to go.
Yeah.
Well, get ready for our episode on the DVD.
I feel like
we
we
will
should
invite you on for.
I feel like we should do a live stream episode of the
That's
DVD.
Not a bad idea.
The Ramones they had End of the Century, which was their documentary, and
It's
at
like
the
a
same
proper
time,
film, though.
yeah. But then at the same time, they released Raw, which was all the leftover document footage that they didn't put into the proper documentary. I felt like Fire and Frenzy could have done something like that.
Well,
But again, I understand the band was dead. It was never coming back unless he ate a can of mayonnaise. So,
where's that Reliant K documentary at? That's what I'm wondering.
yeah.
Yeah.
They told me, Matt Thiessen told me in
Ooh.
2000 or something, in 2001, that they had shot a goofy video of where, a fake behind the music thing where one of them was raised by wolves or something like that. It was a joke, but it never came out as far as I'm aware.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it's cringy as hell.
Yeah, it's probably really shot on video.
I think you need to put the Reliant K signal out and have somebody send that in if they've got the footage of it somewhere.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know what someone needs to do? Someone who's actually good at editing. Someone should actually edit down the Rise and Fall footage into something more
Right.
coherent of a movie.
Danny, will
He
you
also-
accept this challenge?
Yeah,
I could
say,
could totally do it. We have it. We could just rip it
Yeah.
and work on it. One other thing is, it was a stylistic choice for him. I didn't agree with it, for Reese Roper, I mean, to decide that when he had to jump cut in the middle of an interview, to purposely put black frames in. To here's a jump cut, talking, and then cut to another talking.
I was
He
thinking
puts in a black frame.
Normally,
Just don't put in the black frame.
you would put in you cut to a still or something.
Right.
But
But a lot of documentaries nowadays just allow the jump cut within the same interview footage.
Sure.
You can just do that. You don't have to have a special little flash to identify that this interview footage has been
You might
cut.
have thought that was a transition, but that's not actually a transition.
Maybe.
I mean, star wipes are nothing for me.
Rise and Fall of 5 Iron Frenzy Special Edition, or the Despecialized Edition. All those Star Wars fans who have gone back in and
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the real heroes.
yeah.
You got George Lucas as the, I was gonna curse, but I know you guys are not a cursing pod.
Yeah, I'm gonna go and add Jar Jar Binks into every scene.
He could only help things. I feel like Jar Jar probably played trumpet at Soulfest once or something, right?
Oh, yes. Whoa, my God! This is an out of nowhere memory that I saw the Supertones during Chase the Sun era.
Jar Jar was
And
there.
there was they had a touring keyboardist just for that tour. They never had a keyboardist any other time I saw them, and he was wearing a Jar Jar Binks mask for half the
Oh,
show.
man, that's amazing.
Wow.
Well, John and I talked about starting all sorts of synth pop bands but I feel like we should probably start a ska band called Jar Jar and the Gun.
Banks.
I was gonna say Jar Jar and the Gungans or something like that.
That's pretty good too.
Yeah. So
Speaking of Gungans, let's
Yeah.
cover some covers.
but there's one cover, but before that, did you guys hear the Reliant K playing My Evil Plan to Save the World?
Yeah.
Playing
that was Yeah, it's not a good recording.
I think that's blamed more on the recording than how it actually sounded.
Yeah,
No,
and it was like a boot.
It
was a bootleg. It was an actual bootleg recording because this was during the electric.
It sounded rough.
Yeah,
man.
it sounds rough. I'm gonna play it for Jessica. I didn't play it for her yet, but it was during the Electric Youth tour. It was like, hey, thanks to Fire and Frenzy for bringing us on tour. Now we're gonna play one of their songs. And then I think they continued. Reliant Cape also played it the rest of that year if they were playing a festival without Fire and Frenzy.
It starts off poorly.
Yeah.
It gets
So I
worse.
think whatever performance this is the only one that got uploaded to YouTube. So it sounds rough, but there might have been other better ones out there. I know, for instance, I have never found audio or footage of Reliant K playing We Built This City on Rock and Roll, which was from 2000. They did that whole tour in 2000 or 2001. Earlier, whatever. What am I saying? I don't know. Wait, when did all the hype come out? 2001. It was 2001. It was the same year. I can't find audio of that. So this is the only recording of Reliant K.
It sounds
So
rough, and the echo only hurts it.
Yeah. So here it is.
I like the album art.
Yeah. Well, someone put that together. I'm gonna cut this in post with a harsh cut.
And I think it's better than the way it's being run. Oh, the groundwork's laid. Don't need to be afraid. I'm sure that I can fix it when I figure out the physics. My whole plan to save the world is to wait till it's over. It'll go down in history. It's prophetic. No, it's not pathetic. I can't believe I made it up myself. I have an evil plan.
Jessica just made a face.
His voice.
Yeah.
His voice sounds bad.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing I will say is if you don't listen to Thiessen past the first the first 3 gears, you definitely don't get his more melodic singing. He works on that a lot over the years.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So there's that.
So there is.
I would like to hear another recording of that from that same tour, but
I mean, I like that. I think the guitar harmonics work for the song, and I think if it were a studio version. What?
Yes.
I said, "Ooh, music talk."
Be quiet. We need this.
We need this. Quiet. I'm the one talking.
No, I mean, I think that the translation from the horn lines to the harmonics on the guitars, I think totally works. It just sounds so sloppy. That they're like, hey guys, should we try this tomorrow? And then they just and then they're like, it shouldn't be too hard. And then you're
Good
like,
enough.
oh, this is actually kind of a complex song. And,
Right. They could have attempted something easier, but I give them.
But maybe it was
effort.
again, this is a big assumption, but because they played it on that tour with Five Iron, I was like, did they go to Five Iron and say, hey, we want to do one of your songs? What are you not doing this tour?
Maybe, yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, we're not doing. They probably went back and forth. It's like, no, we're doing that song. No, we're doing that song. And then they landed on this one.
Yeah, I mean that's the harmonies on the serving children in pain. If you're not gonna nail that, that's a tough attempt.
Yeah.
Anyway, God bless them for trying.
yeah.
Well, we can
Bless
see,
their heart.
We can see if It's Been a Summer on YouTube in 2015 did a cover of both of. I think you did both versions. Did you guys watch this one as well? It's the one
Yes.
guy who did an acoustic cover. So I'm going to play this for Jessica, who hasn't heard it yet.
Have you seen this guy before? Is he like a Reliant K?
No.
No. He's no body man.
No.
Bobby Moon's this very earnest guy who we haven't heard from in a while, but he did a bunch of Reliant K covers
Yeah.
pretty early on.
This is his only real cover. Everything else is drum covers and stuff. He's having a great time.
He's having fun.
This guy's having a great time. Seems like the chords are pretty simple.
Yeah.
Now he's trying but not really trying to do upstrokes. He's really just doing a campfire upbeat thing. So what do you think of It's Been a Summer, Jess?
It exists.
It exists. 5 stars.
That's right. Andrew's mad because we don't get angry enough with our covers.
Well, I mean, I just feel like early on in year, I feel like you try and keep the tone of the pod fairly positive, whereas John and I are like, this is garbage. So
yeah,
I'm sorry
it's
that we're like
true.
saying like your Lord and Savior Matt Thiessen that song. That
No,
cover
I agree.
was-
It's a really bad cover of
Yeah.
Reliant K. But again, it was just a live performance that night. I don't know. I think we tried to do a movie podcast before we settled on this,
Yeah.
and because we know a lot more about movies, and we could have been a lot more critical about that stuff, but because we don't really know what it takes to make music, we can't. It's hard to be as critical if we're just like, yeah, this is out of key, this sounds bad.
yeah. And our movie podcast didn't end up taking off because we work in the film industry. We're like, well, we don't want to like offend too many people because we can't work if we don't do.
And also, Jessica would
people.
Jessica would stop me because she'd be like thinking I'm talking too inside baseball, and I'm like, whatever. So we got frustrated with each other.
Yeah.
And
Did you have like an angle, or what was your?
No, we were just gonna talk about movies that we like because we like bad movies, and we like looking for regional movies that people have uploaded to Amazon Prime. That
Amazon Prime is the greatest invention of all humanity because anybody can put anything on there.
Yeah.
And it's just so
People don't
wonderfully
realize Amazon
bad.
Prime is basically just one level up from YouTube. Like you can anyone can upload anything to Amazon Prime as long as you actually own the copyright to it.
Okay.
And so you find the craziest crap, and people make hundreds of people make full-length movies in their backyards every year, and they're there on Amazon Prime to be
Yep.
seen.
And Danny
You
and
just
I
have to
spend our
like
nights
crate
looking
digging.
for those.
Yeah.
I know that like Twitch, you can watch anything on Twitch that's on Amazon Prime. So you guys should host a live movie watch
there you
of
go.
those bad movies, and we'll tune in
Yeah.
and watch it with you.
Okay.
I was telling
Anyway.
Jessica we want to do some live streams. There's a couple of Reliant K there's 2 Reliant K web series that they did, like documentary style web series.
Okay.
And then there is the C Spot Rock DVD, which I've never been able to get all the way through, but it's like a Supertones, Reliant K, I think Pillar, definitely some sort of Christian rap rock band, and John Rubin
Okay.
on a tour, and there's just like I've never finished it.
Fascinating.
We're gonna watch that at some point.
I can't wait.
And then I think I just had one more thing.
That mashup, right?
That mashup. Did you hear? So
Yeah.
for when Five Iron Frenzy, I didn't know about this until I found this Sahara. So someone mashed up the Five Iron Frenzy song "Dark and Stormy Night" with
Right.
Sahara, and then I found out that when Five Iron Frenzy got back together, they uploaded all of the isolated tracks for all the instruments to Dark and Stormy Night to SoundCloud to allow people to do a contest of remixes and mashups and stuff. So you can find multiple Dark and Stormy Night derivative works, mashups, re-record, whatever, remixes on SoundCloud. And this one person decided to mash it up with Sahara. I think I said Savannah, but I meant Sahara.
It sounds pretty
So
good.
Yeah, I'm going to play this for Jess right now.
this feels like very seamless, whereas I'm not a big fan of mashups because they usually like whoever's making the mashup is like
Yeah. Jessica hates mashups traditionally because if she knows one or both songs, she can't not hear those songs in her head, so it conflicts.
But that's pretty good.
Yeah, there's a couple of like breakdowns that he or she kind of edited in that didn't work for me, like some transitions from parts. It was like, oh, we're going here now, and then it gets back and then it starts to get seamless again, and then it was like, okay, we're getting into the next part, and then we get there. So it wasn't like totally seamless for me if you heard the whole thing, but.
And you guys said you didn't know music talk.
Nah, yeah.
That was pretty good.
Did you guys?
There were horns in that.
John shared the most beautiful mashup with me recently.
Yeah, no, there's this guy there's a comedian who puts it's been 1 week since you looked at me into like all these songs. Have you guys heard this before?
No, but that sounds amazing.
I've heard things like that, like the Friends when they get down with the sickness and things like that. Yeah,
Friends
is that the same? Is that the same guy?
I don't know. I mean, maybe many people probably use Friends, but it is funny because, like Andrew was saying, you keep kind of waiting for like a more, I don't know, a thorough mashup, but it's really just like they play an intro of a famous song and then it hard switches into "It's been." It's very enjoyable. Anyway,
I want to see if I can find it just so you can experience the joy.
Well, I just want to play the Friends Disturbed mashup that I was talking about. Here's that. That's the 10-second version. That's like memeing out, and then there's like a full version of it.
Amazing. The guy's name is Nate Fernald, and he has Weak Music Volume 1, he calls it. So check that out if you are so inclined.
Man, his the website, like, it doesn't. It's like all the links. I don't remember where I watched these. That you
1 week and what was the song it was mashed up with?
It's like a billion songs.
Okay.
But Nate Fernald is the guy's name, and he's got a Tumblr 1 week.
Here's All-Star 1 week mashup. That's like the
legit.
ultimate Applebee's playlist right there. 1 week and All-Star. That's what I always refer to it as Applebee's music.
Yeah.
Like any kind of like pseudo, like not punk, but like any kind of like Goo Goo Dolls is definitely Applebee's music. I also refer to Goo Goo Dolls as pop punk for people that don't know why you take an unpaid internship. Like basically like pop punk, but not actual punk, just like sanitized enough to play in an Applebee's and relive your glory days after a day at the office.
You know, speaking of Applebee's, I once heard ska described as the feeling that a 13-year-old gets when he sees mozzarella sticks.
Oh, that's right.
Anyway, sorry. That's like a deep cut for ska Facebook group members.
That's been a big thing on the I Hate Five Iron Frenzy message board.
It's been so obnoxious.
Yeah. So I talked about this last week, but David Camarena from Heart Like War, and the Today I Grew Up YouTube show. He's been on Mike Herrera's podcast and stuff. He's a friend of ours in real life here in Los Angeles, and he told me like, oh, you should join, because he knew I do an MXPX memes. He's like, you should join the I Hate Five Iron Frenzy Facebook group. They do a lot of Five Iron Frenzy memes there. So I joined it, and I feel like I'm slowly becoming the villain of that Facebook group.
No, it's wonderful. I love when people don't know that you're trolling them.
Yeah. And we were talking about it, especially with the, did you guys see when I went on the MXPX message group and I pretended I didn't understand that punk rock show was saved for the encore? And everyone got so mad at me.
MXPX group is very earnest, which is...
That's the thing that I love about the Five Iron community is that
no one takes themselves very seriously,
Right.
and everybody seems to be in on the joke, but but MXPX fans, which is why I think people got upset with our first season of the podcast, because they're just like, how dare you critique?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, come on, guys, let's all calm down. Let's not take ourselves so seriously.
What's the Reliant K fan community like?
We're slowly getting a sense of that.
It's
Because it's very, I find it to be very mishmash.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a very wide community where people either get like intense sarcasm or they're kind of like a little more serious.
Yeah, and I definitely don't have a sense of, like, when we started the podcast, we decided to bleep the swears because we thought, okay, Reliant K is closer to, just from being on Goatee Records, they're closer to the CCM, like, clean culture world, so let's not have swears on our podcast and stuff. But then we definitely have found fans who are not that way, and I've found, like, you know, the LGBT fans who have done videos on YouTube and stuff. So politically, religiously, it's sort of all over the board. I definitely have noticed people who have followed us and been like, Reliant K podcast, this is great. And then 2 weeks later, they're not following us anymore. But, like, there's just not one temperament that I found in the Reliant K fandom now. And maybe that's because they've had so many eras, and they've had so many different, like, ways in which they presented themselves. Either they admitted, Reliant K called themselves a ministry band for those first 3 albums for sure, and then we're like, at what point did they maybe not consider themselves a ministry and just consider themselves a real band, like MXPX always was. So because I think Reliant K has evolved so much, they have a very varied fan base that comes from a lot of different points of view than we expected necessarily when we started the podcast.
Yeah, kind of at the beginning, we did a Twitter poll where we were like, because we realized Danny and I in real life swear a lot, so we're like, should we swear? And then Danny gave like 4 different options, and I think the most clicked one was we don't care, but like the second, which was really, really close, was like, you should bleep it, so that's why we bleep it.
Yeah.
But now we could do that, and it would probably be different.
We never A/B tested our approach.
Nope. We're just like, which is, yeah, we're like, this is, which is why when we went into 5 Iron, knowing that the fan base was maybe going to be a little bit more still Christian, maybe erring on the side, maybe having some more conservative leanings. We really tried to, in that first episode, make it abundantly clear what we are, so as not to have people be like, what?
Yeah.
And then like clutch their pearls and find their fainting couch and whatever.
Yeah.
If the world is clamoring for a clean 5 Iron podcast, someone can put it upon themselves to do that.
Well, if it was me, it wouldn't be Jessica, I guess. You wouldn't want to do a 5 Iron Frenzy podcast with me, is what I'm saying.
I don't know.
She looked at me like
Frenzy.
so confused, like, what?
For years now, I've told Danny to do an MXPX podcast, but he's like, I was like, I can't be your co-host because I just don't know enough about the band.
And I don't want to do the Bill Burr one-person podcast talking into a vacuum about MXPX every week.
And that was like before either of us had launched our MXPX.
Yeah.
You but then you could be Jess, you could be like Bill Burr's wife and just occasionally walk in the room, and then Bill Burr like, hey, why don't you talk to the people, and MeUndies, whatever. Sorry.
What are we just talking about, Andrew?
Sorry, I swore. Okay, you can.
We swear on the podcast.
We do. We just bleep it.
Yeah, we just bleep it.
Bleep that, baby.
Can I make an editing job really difficult for you? Just like
it's already like you're just facing a lot with this episode. So
just
like trying to make your life easier.
Just go on a tear and just swear a lot.
What other ground do we need to cover, guys?
I don't know. I feel like I think we did it all.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of MXPX,
Oh, yeah?
I started trying to, because I've been trying to learn the bass, and I
yeah.
I started
I know what
learning
you said.
Chick Magnet last night.
Yes.
And I
this
started playing
is-
it, and I'm like,
Well, first she
"Dang."
did brain that night. First she did brain stew, and
I
she did
did.
it perfect the
It
first
was
time.
easy.
And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I know exactly what she's doing. And then I was playing Animal Crossing, and we need to get Andrew's.
Yeah.
Yeah, my friend code.
Yeah, your friend
Yeah.
code. So I'm playing Animal Crossing, and I'm not paying attention to what she's practicing after she had successfully done brain stew. And she's like, Danny, are you hearing what I'm doing? And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I'm zoned out. What? And she's like, okay, I'm gonna do it again. And she does it again. And let me think of how it was done, because Chick Magnet would be da dun 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 da dun 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 dun. So she was like dun da dun 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 da dun dun. And I'm like, I don't know what you're playing. Like once she wouldn't tell me.
To me, it sounded like Chick Magnet. To Danny, he's like, as soon as I'm doing it, I'm so proud because like I just learned it for him, and I'm like, Danny, listen, and he's like,
I couldn't tell.
I don't know what that is.
And then when
I'm
she
like-
told me
he's
finally
like, that
after a
doesn't
couple
sound like
minutes,
Chick Magnet.
I could tell the notes were there, but the rhythm the groove was wrong.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I also play bass, and those were two of the first songs that I played.
Nice.
Along with Five Iron's Flowery Song, the like do 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 do.
Oh, nice. You
so
can learn
anyways,
that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a catchy one if you want to get some bass tabs going.
Yeah.
It's like the best.
Have you learned slapping yet? Of
I
the
haven't
bass?
learned slapping yet. I'm
Okay.
doing Bass Buzz, that like teacher online program, and
Okay.
I haven't gotten to slapping yet. He's like, we'll learn slapping, but that's much later. And I'm like, oh, so I have to get through all the like introduction
Sure.
stuff before I can get there.
Before you can do like the Seinfeld theme and stuff.
Yeah. Which I learned was on a keyboard, apparently.
Yeah,
And
but you can
yeah.
fake it.
Yeah.
I mean, it can,
Yeah.
it can be done.
I think
So
you
one
just
thing
got a. I think you just got a. Just got a
Cease and
copyright
desist.
strike.
That was like 2 seconds. Fair enough. Well,
What's the deal with copyright strikes?
dude, sorry guys, your archive has been taken down.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld, huge Reliant K fan.
Well,
How do you pronounce this?
there's something there. He would write a book called like The Complex Infrastructure of the Female Mind. That seems kind of like a Jerry thing to do.
Bird and the B-sides.
Birds and the Bee movie.
B movie. Bird and the B movie. That's what I was getting at.
Done and done.
Andrew pushed me down to get to that finish line.
I can't wait for that to show up on your Instagram or the Not MXPX memes.
I have.
or something like that.
I just thought of it because I did that once. I took the bird out of the Bird and the B-sides, and I just
Okay,
put in
okay.
the Jerry Seinfeld. But I can push it harder. I can do more with that later.
Push your art to the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been very fun to talk nonsense with you guys.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna become a Reliant K fan. I can feel it.
So-
John,
So
don't end this podcast in a lie.
I'm making my way through.
Well, like 4 hours ago, I did have a recommendation for you, and I'll go back to it. And that's where we can end on. Since you said like you went up basically to, you said you went up to basically, right?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
5, yeah. It was Andrew who went up to 5 scores. So since you're not as familiar with their last decade,
Uh-huh.
check out Forget Not Slow Down.
Yeah, that's the
Check
one that
it-
everybody seems to tell me to check.
Yeah, and then check out Air for Free because I think it's like it's a great way in which Reliant K caught up to today.
Okay.
That's all I want to say. Like they're it's not a pop punk pop rock album. They just found a way to catch up to the sort of pop ideas of today. After you've deep dive, you checked out those albums enough, then go to Collapsible Lung.
No, don't ever listen to Collapsible Lung ever. Just don't.
No, this is
Avoid
what
it
I'm
at all
saying.
costs.
Don't listen. Well, what I'm definitely saying is do not listen to Collapsible Lung until you've heard Air for Free and Forget Not Slow Down.
Okay.
But then when you've hopefully found those albums to have some merit, then I want to know what you think of Collapsible Lung because that is the anti Air for Free. That is where they were like, let's be every popular band right now.
Right. The only frame of reference I have for it is when you guys have mentioned it on the pod. So,
Right.
fascinating. Yes, I will do a deep dive and report back. Yeah. Thanks for having us, guys.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess just to wrap up, like remind everyone where they can hear Magnified Pod. And I guess since this is a simulcast, we'll have to do the same thing.
Let's do it at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. Three, two.
I mean, we're on all the regular places: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Magnified Pod.
Send us an email, magnifiedpod@gmail.com. You can give us a call or voicemail, 872-762-4763, 8727-MAGPOD.
That's a long number. No, you said it twice. Get it on. She's looking at me like you're an idiot. And then you can continue to boo me as I do our plugs.
Oh, but first, and their art is by our friend from college.
That's right.
Matt.
I never knew the origins of this. Let's
Yeah.
hear more
Right.
about this.
He was a groomsman at our wedding.
So Matt, Heavy Ordnance Studios, his name's Matt. He's a friend of ours from college where we met. And he was a big fan of, he's not a Christian, as far as I'm aware, right?
Oh, we're gonna have to get new
we've never-
artwork, I guess.
He's not evangelical. I could definitely say that. I don't know his religious background, but he just liked Earthworm Jim and he liked Doug Staple's work. And I was like, oh, if you like Doug Staple, have you ever seen these Fire and Frenzy covers? And he had not. I didn't try to get him into Fire and Frenzy or whatever from that. He had this whole pitch for like a now Doug Staple's he's like crowdfunding an actual Earthworm Jim comic book, like a new comic book.
Right.
But he had back in 2005, our friend Heavy Ordnance Studio Matt, he had this whole pitch for like a Dark Knight Returns Earthworm Jim story. Ooh. And it was great. He didn't pitch it that way. He just had like this Dark Knight of the Soul sort of Earthworm Jim like is pseudo ending story, and I suggested Dirt Knight Returns as the title.
That's good. That's good.
And he could draw Earthworm Jim like it was Doug Staple drawing it. So when you guys were looking for art, I knew to go to him right away because I already knew he could copy Doug Staple's style in that way.
Yeah, and it's perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Rules. Thank you for that. Thank you for the Reese intro. Thank you for all your support over the years. I mean,
yes.
All
that Reese intro, I haven't talked about that, but yeah, when Reese says you're listening to our newest podcast ever, that was at the Glass House show last year, or the year before, I don't know, whenever. And
2 years ago, I think, maybe?
Yeah. And basically, I wanted to get that for you guys, but I didn't want to be the asshole who pushed some kid out of the way from talking to Reese Roper to say, hey, I need to talk to you. So I waited all night, and I was the last one to talk to him, and I could tell Reese was on his, running on fumes. Yeah. And he was super gracious to do that when I'm, the last guy, the last person at the party, totally outwearing his welcome and asking him to do that intro for your podcast.
Well, that just makes us love the guy even more.
And love you even more. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you want to hear a lot more of Reese Roper, listen to our version of this episode because he may have left a few voicemails.
Oh, sweet.
Wow.
Mostly related to Brave Saint Saturn.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Nice.
The closest we've gotten
tease
to
there.
Yeah. We've had one person from Reliant K, John Schneck, interact with the show. The closest we've had is Matt Thiessen liked 3 tweets that we had started off, but not tweets that we had made.
No, not our tweets or anything, just other people's tweets.
I mean, it's like the 6 degrees of tweet separation.
Yeah.
Basically, he's a co-host.
But if he's out there, if Matt Thiessen, you're out there, give us a call at 402-95-SADie. Send us,
dude, you can't be that thirsty.
Especially because early on we were promising the band we would never because not just you guys but other song by song podcasts I listen to, and not just Blink-155 but a bunch of them are always we got to get this person on our podcast, we got to get this person on our podcast, and I'm like, Jessica and I are not comfortable doing that.
Yeah. It is weird once you cross the threshold.
Yeah.
You should plug all the places people can find you guys.
So, we're on all the usual podcast places, and you can check us out on Instagram and Twitter, which are both Sadie Hawkins Pod. And we have our phone number, which is 402-95-SADIE. You leave us a voicemail. And we also have a YouTube page that I've been getting some stuff. I mean, we just upload our episodes right now, but I'm working on some like Reliant K type videos to upload there. So if you subscribe to that, you'll get the YouTube version of our episodes and hopefully some cool Reliant K related. Basically, after watching all of these fan edits and stuff, I'm like, I should start doing some of these. I've learned a thing or two from Joe 14 or whatever. All these random. Oh, never mind.
Awesome.
I was gonna reference a specific. What was that Lord of the Rings one?
Oh,
Archer
my
14 or
gosh,
something like that. Yeah, that was.
What's Danny Stairs' handle? It's like I can't. It's very obscure, like Elvish word. I can't even.
Yeah.
Think of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like
it's A.E. Granko.
Yeah, something like that.
Golden Archer. Golden Archer.
There you
That
go.
was the name of the guy who uploaded a Lord of the Rings Reliant K fan video. And when I first watched it, I thought it was going to be Narnia because I was used to seeing Narnia Reliant K fan videos. And I'm like, wait, it's Lord of the Rings.
That's amazing.
Gotta get Nicky P, get Nick Polk to.
Yes, he's also
Judge-
an Elvish enthusiast. Well, I look forward to that. I also think that if you guys ever do start your movie pod, I would like to guest on it, so get that going again.
Okay.
John probably has some DVDs he can lend you to.
Nice.
Many DVDs available to look.
We have all the URLs for it. Like we have
Yeah,
all the names.
it's
stuff
called
saved.
Cinema Cataclysm. So if you go out there and
Ooh.
look for Cinema Cataclysm, the word nothing is active on those, but it's out there.
Yeah.
okay.
Don't pitch this too hard. John is gonna leave the podcast to co-host with you.
If you would have asked me a couple years ago whether I'd be co-hosting a movie podcast or a Christian alternative 90s music podcast, I would have guessed the former, but I'm happy with my life choices, so it's all good. All right. Good to talk to you guys.
All right. Great to talk to you. Thank
Thank you so much.
All right, later,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.